here to dwell.
A battle in the heart of Alabama caught our attention. Coal miners in one community, they've been on strike now for months.
Working as long as 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, in some of the most dangerous conditions.
I really think that the labor movement is the single greatest force for democracy in the history of the United States.
The story of Alabama is a story of not just resilience, but of militancy.
I say no contract, you say no code. No contract, no contract.
If we ain't all free, ain't none of us free.
You're listening to Alabama's only union talk radio show, The Valley Labor Report, with Adam Keller and Jacob Morrison.
Hello, Tennessee Valley. This is The Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison, here with my co-host and fellow agitator Adam Keller, and we are broadcasting live online and on the radio from the heart of the Tennessee Valley, the Spice Radio Studios in Huntsville, Alabama. Today, don't forget about the Letter Carriers Food Drive. 1 week from today, Lee Hedgepeth joins to talk about journalism in Alabama. Every day should be Labor Day. All that and more on today's program. If you want to be part of the show, we've got a phone number and the line is open. You can give us a call at 844-899-TVLR. That is 844-899-8857. You can also leave a voicemail or send us a text message throughout the week, and we might reply on the next program. If you haven't gotten enough of us by the time that we wrap up here on the radio, or if you just want to see what we're up to throughout the week, then make sure you follow us online. We are anywhere you find anything online, all at the Valley Labor Report. But in particular, make sure that you're bookmarking our website, TVLR.fm. That website is updated every day with new content, articles, write-ups of our clips, good stuff that you can share with your friends and family. Just a reminder, your support helps us stay on the air. Our largest single source of funding comes directly from our listeners. So if you want to become a sustaining donor, if you want to make a one-time donation, sort of as a clip for a particularly good segment, or buy our merch, you can, again, do that all at our website. You can donate to the show at tvlr.fm/donate, and you can buy our merch at tvlr.fm/store. And we have our new shirts in. The shirts that we that we had on pre-order a while back. I don't know if you should be able to see that on the stream. Obviously, if you're just listening to us on the radio, you're not going to be able to see it. But it's a really good shirt, union made in America. And it's not just the typical, like, super harsh kind of Gildan style t-shirts. They're really nice. They're soft. They're sturdy. Really, really good stuff. So I'm excited to get those out to folks, and I believe that people will like them. And we ordered about 20 extra. So if you want to go on our store and get and snag one of those before they're gone, you can do that. tvlr.fm/store. And if you bought a shirt, you should be getting it in the next 5 to 10 business days. If you're a member of a union, then definitely think about getting your local to sponsor the show. Our local union sponsors are very important, and we would not be able to do it without them. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out for more details on that. We'd be happy to answer any questions that you or your executive board might have. We are happy to speak to the membership at a general membership meeting or at a conference or anything like that. Happy to do that.
Absolutely. Thank you to all those sponsors. Let me add a disclaimer that any viewpoints or opinions expressed in this program belong solely to their author, do not necessarily represent any organization or sponsor. We welcome all of our listeners, whether you're on YouTube, Facebook, WVNN, WZZA, WHIV, or through your favorite podcast app. And we are proud to be part of the Labor Radio Podcast Network and encourage our listeners to check it out.
Come on, you.
All right. Sorry about that.
No worries. So today, Porch Fest. Porch Fest is happening in 5 Points here in Huntsville. I'm Lord willing, I'm gonna be there, and obviously, part of the show, Ben Job, owner of Spice Radio Studios. He is the Porch Fest czar. So tell us, give us one more reminder about what folks are going to be able to see if they go to Pratt Avenue today from 5 to 9 p.m.
Yes, y'all. It's Pratt Avenue. It's the same as University Drive. If you just keep going east, southeast towards town, you're gonna hit Porch Fest because they're shutting down the road this year. I'm very excited because there was so many musicians, kids, and dogs running around, set up all over the street. The streets were full last year, and I expect it to be super packed today because the weather has cleared up. But yeah, some amazing sample tray of all different types of amazing local music flavors. I have a couple recommendations. If you've heard of the Invisible City, the host is playing a solo show at 5 p.m. Brad Posey will be at Porch 210. And don't worry about the porch numbers because you can pretty much walk the entirety of the festival without having to leave the thing. And there's porta potties set up along the outside, and there'll be food trucks as well. So I believe coolers are fine too. So just bring your own brews. It is a free event. I forgot to mention that. Kids and animals on leashes are cool. But yeah, there's so much variety. If you haven't seen a lot of jazz music around here, Josh Couts and friends will be playing at 6 p.m. at Porch 1104, some of the best jazz players in town, and you just don't see that a lot anymore, so I want to plug that one for sure. And if you just like rock or like newer rock bands, Drop Diver and Camacho are playing at 6 and 7 p.m. at 1505. There's some amazing talent there. Some younger guys that play very like classic style rock, and Camacho's got an amazing singer, keyboard player. Of course, Wanda Wesolowski. If you're into local music, you probably heard of Wanda. She's got a Wanda van. She has Wanda bread merch. She's got all the Wanda puns you can handle, and an amazing band. The Beastie Boys are playing, and Free Candy is one of my favorite jam band from around here. They played at 420 Fest. Gives you an idea of the kind of all the stuff they're slinging out there. And the Go-Go Killers. If you're at rockabilly scene is huge around here. Punk rock and rockabilly has a huge history over here, and they're a big part of that. They have I've seen them wearing lizard skin boots. They've got the full suits on. They're professional wreck and rollers, as they call it. But right. I don't know. There's way more.
And what about the food trucks? Do you know who's going to be there?
I think Fire and Spice is going to be there. I don't know off the top of my head. But they had at least 2 or 3 options last year, and I assume it's grown since then. So I don't know who'll be out there specifically. But the bands are staggered, so just walk down the street and find something you like and hang out with us.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Ben Job, czar of Porch Fest. Appreciate that plug.
Thank you for giving me the upgrade too. Like I love to have that authority.
There you go.
And thanks for having me on the show to plug it too.
Oh yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'm gonna be there
for sure. We'll see you there 5 to 9.
All right, man. Adam, are you gonna be able to make it to Porch Fest?
He said, "Are you gonna be able to make it?"
Yes, I do believe so. Also, I just want to point out that, typically on this show, we are anti-monarchy. I'll make an exception for the Czar of Porch Fest, Ben Job. I will make some exception there.
Maybe we should.
No guillotines necessary in that instance, okay?
There you go.
Coronation Day, y'all.
Coronation Day.
Yeah, I heard the announcement of the coronation as we were going into the show, and it just reminded me of how...
That's weird, isn't it?
It's so weird, and it is so bizarre that we have... that there are people that actually defend the monarchy, and there are American conservatives that are out there defending the monarchy. I mean, I heard Ben Shapiro and like Candace Owens go on about like, oh, it's an important institution or whatever. And these are supposed to be the 1776 people, right? I mean, that really kind of gives away the game. Like if we were 200 years ago, the people who are conservative today, they would be redcoats, right? That would be.
Yeah, exactly. It's a bizarre phenomenon, and proud to be an American.
Proud to be an American. Screw the king. Down with the king. Down with tyranny. Sic semper tyrannis. That's
There you go.
Yeah, there we go. On the theme of opposing hierarchy, last week was May Day. Monday was May Day.
That's right.
And that is a very important day in the history of working class history, Adam. So tell me about May Day.
So May 1st was May Day, or International Workers' Day. This is a day to recognize the social and economic achievements of the international labor movement. The day is officially recognized as a Labor Day holiday in much of the world, but not the United States. Much of the world saw labor rallies, marches, and protests on May Day, which unfortunately also meant state repression. See France, Turkey, South Korea for examples. Of course, May Day also commemorates the 1886 Haymarket Massacre in Chicago, in which Chicago police fired on workers during a protest, killing several demonstrators. According to historian William J. Adelman, quote, "No single event has influenced the history of labor in Illinois, the United States, and even the world more than the Chicago Haymarket Affair. It began with a rally on May 4th, 1886, but the consequences are still being felt today. Although the rally is included in American history textbooks, very few present the event accurately or point out its significance." So I'm going to quote here from a piece by Adelman for the Illinois Labor History Society, because I believe it's important that we remember our history, we remember our heritage as working class people. The entire event was most mysterious. To understand what happened at Haymarket, it is necessary to go back to the summer of 1884, when the Federation of Organized Trades and Labor Unions, the predecessor of the American Federation of Labor, called for May 1st, 1886 to be the beginning of a nationwide movement for the 8-hour day. This wasn't a particularly radical idea, since both Illinois workers and federal employees were supposed to have been covered by an 8-hour day law since 1867. The problem was that the federal government failed to enforce its own law, and in Illinois, employers forced workers to sign waivers of the law as condition of employment. With 2 years to plan, the organized labor movement in Chicago and throughout Illinois sent out questionnaires to employers to see how they felt about shorter hours and other issues, including child labor. Songs were written like the 8-hour day. Everywhere slogans were heard like 8 hours for work, 8 hours for rest, 8 hours for what we will. Or shortening the hours increased the pay. Two of the organizers of these demonstrations were Lucy and Albert Parsons. Lucy had been born a slave in Texas around 1853. Her heritage was African American, Native American, and Mexican. She worked for the Freedmen's Bureau after the Civil War. After her marriage to Albert, they moved to Chicago, where she turned her attention to writing and organizing women sewing workers. Albert was a printer, a member of the Knights of Labor, editor of the labor paper The Alarm, and one of the founders of the Chicago Trades and Labor Assembly. On Sunday, May 2nd, Albert went to Ohio to organize rallies there, while Lucy and others staged another peaceful march of 35,000 workers. But on Monday, May 3rd, the peaceful scene turned violent when the Chicago police attacked and killed picketing workers at the McCormick Reaper plant at Western and Blue Island Avenues. This attack by police provoked a protest meeting which was planned for Haymarket Square on the evening of Tuesday, May 4th. Very few textbooks provide a thorough explanation of the events that led to Haymarket, nor do they mention that the pro-labor mayor of Chicago, Carter Harrison, gave permission for the meeting. Most speakers failed to appear. Instead of starting at 7:30, the meeting was delayed for about an hour. Instead of the expected 20,000 people, fewer than 2,500 attended. Two substitute speakers ran over to Haymarket Square at the last minute. They had been attending a meeting of sewing workers organized by Lucy Parsons and her fellow labor organizer, Lizzie Holmes of Geneva, Illinois. These last-minute speakers were Albert Parsons, just returned from Ohio, and Samuel Fielden, an English-born Methodist lay preacher who worked in the labor movement. The Haymarket meeting was almost over, and only about 200 people remained when they were attacked by 176 policemen carrying Winchester repeater rifles. Fielden was speaking. Even Lucy and Albert Parsons had left because it was beginning to rain. Then someone, unknown to this day, threw the first dynamite bomb ever used in peacetime history of the United States. The police panicked, and in the darkness many shot at their own men. Eventually, 7 policemen died, only one directly accountable to the bomb. 4 workers were also killed, but few textbooks bother to mention this fact. The next day, martial law was declared, not just in Chicago, but throughout the nation. Anti-labor governments around the world used the Chicago incident to crush local union movements. In Chicago, labor leaders were rounded up, houses were entered without search warrants, and union newspapers were closed down. Eventually, 8 men, representing a cross-section of the labor movement, were selected to be tried. Among them were Fielden, Parsons, and a young carpenter named Louis Ling, who was accused of throwing the bomb. Ling had witnesses to prove he was over a mile away at the time. The 2-month-long trial ranks as one of the most notorious in American history. The Chicago Tribune even offered to pay money to the jury if it found the 8 men guilty. On August 20th, 1886, the jury reported its verdict of guilty with the death penalty by hanging for 7 of the Haymarket 8 and 15 years of hard labor for Neeb. On November 10th, the day before the execution, Samuel Gompers came from Washington to appeal to Governor Oglesby for the last time. The national and worldwide pressure did finally force the governor to change the sentences of Samuel Fielden and Michael Schwab to imprisonment for life. Although 5 of the 8 were still to be hanged the next day, on the morning of November 10th, Louis Ling was found in his cell, his head half blown away by a dynamite cap. The entire event was most mysterious, since Ling was hoping to receive a pardon that very day. Adolph Fisher, George Engel, Albert Parsons, and August Spies were hanged on November 11th, 1887. In June of 1893, Governor John P. Outgold pardoned the 3 men still alive and condemned the entire judicial system that had allowed this injustice. The real issues of the Haymarket affair were freedom of speech, freedom of the press, the right to free assembly, the right to a fair trial by a jury of peers, and the right of workers to organize and fight for things like the 8-hour day. While textbooks tell about the bomb, they fail to mention the reason for the meeting or what happened afterwards. Some books even fail to mention the fact that many of those who were tried were not even at the Haymarket meeting, but were arrested simply because they were union organizers. Sadly, these rights have been abridged many times in American history. During the civil rights marches of the 1960s, the anti-Vietnam War demonstrations, and the 1968 Democratic National Convention, we saw similar violations to our constitutional rights. The Haymarket Affair took on worldwide dimension in July 1889, when a delegate from the American Federation of Labor recommended at a labor conference in Paris that May 1st be set aside as International Labor Day, in memory of Haymarket martyrs and the injustice of the Haymarket Affair. Today, in almost every major industrial nation, May Day is Labor Day. Even Great Britain and Israel have passed legislation in recent years declaring this date a national holiday. For years, half of the American labor movement observed May 1st as Labor Day, while the other half observed the first Monday in September. After the Russian Revolution, the May 1st date was mistakenly associated with communism, and in a protest against Soviet policy, May 1st was proclaimed Law Day in the 1960s. The year 1986 marked the centennial of the 8-Hour Day movement and the Haymarket Affair. Folk singer Pete Seeger and a group called the People Yes, named after Sandburg's volume of poems by that name, planned a nationwide celebration. This event offered teachers a unique opportunity to teach the facts about Haymarket and to correct the distortions and inaccuracies in our textbooks. Again, that was from William J. Adelman of the Illinois Labor History Society. It has now been 137 years. But it's up to all of us in the labor movement to remember these martyrs and the many, many more who fought and died to build a better world for the working class.
Absolutely. Yep, it's important to remember that. We have on the line Travis McCoy. He is a steward for the National Association of Letter Carriers, Branch 462 here in Madison. And he has called in to talk to us about the letter carriers' annual food drive that they do, and to remind everybody that it's going to be next week, Saturday, May the 13th. So, Travis, thanks for calling in. I appreciate it. Have we got him on?
Let's try that again, Travis.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yeah. I can hear you now.
Hi there. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be on. A long-time listener, first-time caller.
Appreciate it, and we've had many conversations with Travis off the air. He's a good brother, puts in a lot of work for his coworkers, sisters and brothers over there with the letter carriers in Madison and Huntsville and Scottsboro and all over the place. So, but today you're talking to us about the food drive that y'all have every year, and it's going to be Saturday, May the 13th. So, talk to us about that. And the first question, I guess, is how do people participate in the food drive?
We'll be delivering in the not-too-distant future cards to across North Alabama. Residents can simply fill a bag and place it near their mail receptacle, whether it's at the curb or their front porch, and their carrier will collect it on May 13th. The drive is always the second Saturday in May.
Awesome. So just put a bag of non-perishable food items by your mailbox, and your letter carrier will pick it up. Now, what about folks in apartment complexes? I have I live in an apartment complex, and I've got a big, like this big mail room. Where do I put stuff to if I wanted to donate?
Near the mail receptacle again, or possibly in the office for the apartment complex, but we would advise near the delivery point for your carrier, just to make it easier for them, because on that same day we will also be delivering the mail. The mail doesn't stop. Your carrier is going to be pulling double duty that day, so we just ask our customers make it just that little bit easier for them to get it all done.
Perfect. And this is something that the union is doing. It's not a drive by the Postal Service. It is something that's done through the union. And so every second Saturday in May, annually, y'all do this food drive, where you ask people who receive mail service to make a donation of non-perishable food items. Where do those donations go?
Our branch is working in coordination with the Food Bank of North Alabama. All donations will go to that local organization.
Perfect. The Food Bank of North Alabama. And y'all do this every year. Do you have any numbers off the top of your head of I know that I've seen over the past few years, stats about like we donated X amount of pounds of food this year. Do you know any of those numbers?
Yes, sir. The Stamp Out Hunger food drive started as a pilot program back in 1991. It was staged in 10 select cities, and it was so popular, it proved so successful that it then became an annual event. First being after being revamped and launched at the national level back in 1993. So we're in our 31st year of conducting our national food drive, and as of 2019, we have collected just under 2 billion pounds nationwide. We don't have good numbers past 2019, unfortunately, just as with so many other charitable efforts across the globe. COVID was a significant disruption. We were forced to cancel in 2020 and 2021. We resumed in 2022, and we are looking to build on that momentum again. There are many food insecure families in Alabama, and particularly in North Alabama, and they need our help. Approximately 1 in 5 children in North Alabama are food insecure. That doesn't mean starving necessarily. That just means they don't know where their next meal is going to come from.
Right. Yeah, that's definitely important to be able to support our neighbors, and I really appreciate your union leading on that effort and allowing us to support y'all in that way. Is there anything else that folks ought to know about this food drive?
Off the top of my head, we just like to let the public know that we very much appreciate their generosity. There's a particular need for protein donations, peanut butter, soybeans, non-perishable food products of that nature. I would emphasize protein donations and thank the public for their contributions.
Awesome. Travis McCoy, steward of the National Association of Letter Carriers, Branch 462. Really appreciate your time, and I look forward to contributing next weekend, and hope we'll have a lot of listeners do the same.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yep. Talk to you later. $2 super chat from Strom McCallum. Solidarity from North Carolina. Appreciate it, Strom. Thank you very much. And we had got several people in the chat this morning. Really appreciate it. If you want to be part of the conversation during the show, you can go to the YouTubes and participate in the chat. I had some compliments on Adam's Mayday segment, and Vex the Cat says thank you to Travis. Strom says he's about to go catch some catfish. That sounds like a lot of fun. Hope you have a good. Hope you're able to catch a bunch. Appreciate Travis dropping in and talking to us about that. We are going to take a break really quick, and we'll be right back. We're going to talk to Lee Hedgepeth. He is an Alabama journalist who started a new kind of independent journalism outfit, Tread by Lee, and we're really excited about it. Excited about his story and some of the work that he did before he went independent, and some of the stuff that he's done since. He's always done really good work as far as I can tell. So really excited to talk to him about his story and some of the reporting that he's done here in Alabama. So you're going to want to hear that conversation. Make sure that you stay tuned. You're listening to the Valley Labor Report.
IBW 558 is like a great football team. You've got to have the aptitude, skills, and knowledge to outperform the competition. If you're a non-union electrician, now is the perfect time to get off the sideline and join our team. We have the absolute best wages and benefit package in North Alabama and Southern Tennessee. It's because our team stands together, bargains together, and our families benefit from it. With immediate openings, you have the opportunity to see why the IBW is the right choice.
Support for the Valley Labor Report comes from the International Federation of Professional and Technical Engineers Union. Learn more by visiting www.ifpte.org.
The attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have stood with the working people of Alabama for over 40 years, providing skilled legal representation for your workplace injury claims. When you are injured on the job, it can be a scary time. The attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs have the experience to guide you through the process to make sure that you and your family are properly taken care of and your rights are protected. If you need help, call the attorneys at Maples, Tucker, and Jacobs at 855-617-9333 or visit online at www.mtnj.com. No representation is made that the quality of legal services provided is greater than the quality of legal services provided by other law firms.
Support for this program comes from the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 136, out of Central Alabama. Learn more at ibew136.org.
Attention union members, membership organizations, podcasters, or anyone with a payment processing need. The future is here, and your organization needs to be prepared by working with Unionly. With Unionly, your union or organization can take payments on a mobile device, eliminating processing fees, giving you a better price than other payment processing methods, while at the same time supporting a union-friendly business with a specialized skill set to meet your needs. Your members will thank you when they pay their dues at their convenience without waiting in line to deposit cash or check. Start preparing for the future today by calling 206-595-8631 or visiting unionly.io.
Are you looking for a better future, a career that can have you set for life, and to be a part of something that's bigger than yourself? If you are, then consider a skilled trades apprenticeship with the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades. The work of IUPAT is all around us, from the industrial painters who work on the bridges to drywall finishers, floor coverers, the glazers who install the glass in our skylines, and so much more. With an IUPAT apprenticeship, you earn while you learn and receive benefits while learning the trade, including a pension. We provide world-class education free of charge. That's right, no student debt. Our starting salaries for apprentices that graduate is above the national median salary with benefits for entire families. And you have the flexibility to take your trade wherever you'd like in the country to work. IUPAT District Council 77 covers our entire region, so give Adam Booth a call at 205-603-3142 for more information. Again, that phone number is 205-603-3142. Come build a better future with us today and join IUPAT.
The sign hit the city like a bolt of lightning.
You know the photo. It's iconic. Marches in the streets holding a simple sign with a simple message.
I am a man.
The I Am Story podcast explores the fight that inspired those words, how a group of sanitation workers in Memphis stood up and made history.
They don't see us as men and women.
Go to iamstory.com or wherever you get your podcasts to subscribe.
I'm attorney Tommy Sinyard. When you've been injured and need help, you need a lawyer who's with you.
Sinyard Law. You need attorneys always available to take care of you. Sinyard Law.
And keep you in the loop. It's your case. You need to know what's happening.
Sinyard Law. And never a charge to meet with us to evaluate your case. Sinyard Law.
A new firm, but an old name. One that will stay with you every step of the way.
Sinyard Law. The name with proven results.
Come all you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old union has come in here to dwell.
Labor creates all wealth should go to labor, and you are listening to the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host is Adam Keller. We've got a phone number. If you've got anything to add, you can give us a call or send us a text message. The phone number is 844-899-TVLR. That is 844-899-8857. We're going to get right into our interview with Lee Hedgepeth. Lee Hedgepeth is a longtime Alabama journalist, and he came from CBS 42 before parting ways with them and beginning an independent journalism outfit, Tread by Lee. You can follow him on Twitter at, I think it's at Lee Hedgepeth, and then his, you can follow at Tread by Lee on Twitter as well. So, Lee, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us here on the Valley Labor Report.
Of course, glad to be here.
So, the first thing, I guess, is you were a journalist at CBS 42. How long did you work? How long were you working there? It was a while, wasn't it?
Yes, I was at CBS 42 for about 2 years. Before that, my training was in basically at newspapers across the state. So I worked down in Mobile at a newspaper called Lagniappe, an alternative weekly down there. And then I worked over at the Anniston Star, which is a newspaper in East Alabama. So.
Gotcha. Yeah, and so you had a, the split was not amicable, and I'm not clear about whether it was a resignation or you were actually fired. But can talk to us about what happened there?
Sure. So, kind of my role at CBS 42, I was a digital investigative reporter. So, the typical kinds of stories that TV stations in Alabama produce are stories that are focused on, what can I get in a package, a minute and 30 package? What is very visual? What types of interviews can I turn around in a day? And that's not the type of journalism that I had done at newspapers, right? I had done more long form investigative journalism. And so that's what I was doing at CBS 42. So it was already a kind of journalism that wasn't really particularly fit with the medium that I was using, right? A TV station isn't exactly the venue for publishing that type of long form journalism. But I was trying to do those types of stories. So one story that we had been working on there at CBS was the story of Anthony Mitchell. So this is an individual who was having some drug issues, having some mental instability issues. His family ended up calling local police in Walker County for a welfare check. And when the police came, they alleged that Anthony shot at them. They ended up arresting him for attempted murder after, going on a welfare check. His family said, that kind of shows the danger of calling police in situations like this in places like Alabama and really anywhere. But after he's in police custody for about 2 weeks, he ends up dying in police custody. So his family later files a lawsuit saying that he froze to death. And so I was able to break the story of his death in police custody. It was a story that was really important to me. We had another reporter there at CBS that is from Walker County, so it was important to her as well. A couple of weeks after this happened,
well, really quickly before we get into that, his death in police custody was, really kind of uniquely astonished. Just unique in its grossness, right?
Sure, yeah. So one of the things that's alleged in the federal lawsuit that his family's filed is that he froze to death, right? So the doctor's notes from the ER say that his body temperature was something like 72 degrees when he arrived at the hospital. So, this is severe hypothermia. His family says he was kept in a frigid environment over a long period of time, something that Walker County officials have denied. But obviously, you can't deny that he died, and he died of hypothermia. So yeah, particularly gross situation, and one that's really important. I felt was really important to make sure people understood not just the police side of this and kind of the mainstream media's take on it, which was always, if you shoot at police, you're going to get shot, right? And that type of narrative is one that I think is very easy for journalists who may not want to make that second phone call to somebody besides the police. Right. And I think it's something that we have to work on as journalists in Alabama, is like figuring out, we can't just allow police statements to just be the entire story, which is a lot of the case in some of these more mainstream reports.
Yeah, I saw something the other day that and it's something that I think a lot of people have known, but about the fentanyl overdoses, quote unquote, by police officers. They're all across the country saying that, I just touched fentanyl and I overdosed, and there's absolutely no data or anything to suggest that that's even possible. And in fact, the symptoms that cops say that they have when they get quote unquote overdosed by fentanyl is more consistent with a panic attack than with than with fentanyl overdose, and that's something that you just see all the time. Like reporters just say that, oh yeah, well the police said this, and so that's the case. Right. And so it's really good to see folks like you at least questioning it, like is not even necessarily just assuming that the cops are lying to you, but trust but verify, right? That was the Ronald Reagan
job
thing.
Yeah,
trust but verify. And so you did some work trying to verify some of the facts around this story, and you can pick up from there.
Yeah, so, the issue with CBS came along when the Attorney General was in town. So Attorney General Steve Marshall has been a very vocal opponent of any measures that would, lessen the incarceral reality of the state of Alabama. And so he had been going around kind of talking to news outlets about how bad the quote unquote inmate release was. So a few inmates were released a couple of months ago, based on a law that was passed a couple of years ago by the Alabama legislature, right? They should have known that this was happening. And the Alabama Department of Corrections had failed to notify some of the victims. And so that became an issue in the release. But basically, the Attorney General was going around on this kind of media frenzy, talking about how horrible it was that we were releasing prisoners that in large part had spent, much of their entire sentence already incarcerated and served those sentences. But the Attorney General said to CBS's management, I will answer your questions about Walker County, which in reality that meant I will say it's being investigated and I can't say anything. If and only if you interview me and ask about how bad this inmate release was, right? Those types of conditions are not types of conditions that journalists should be accepting. Right. If you want to, you should answer, and it is your job to answer questions about an Alabamian that died in police custody. Right. You're the top law enforcement in the state of Alabama, and it's your job to answer those questions. So CBS did not tell me about this proposal. Our Montgomery reporter said that she wouldn't do the interview because of the condition that the Attorney General had set, but they chose to do it anyway. They had a host at CBS do the interview with the Attorney General. The Attorney General didn't really say anything of substance at first about the Walker County case. We showed him a video that I had obtained there at CBS 42 related to Mr. Mitchell being taken out by Walker County Sheriff's Office and placed into a police vehicle. And the police vehicle was then taken to the medical emergency. The police had originally told us that Mr. Mitchell was alert and conscious when he left the jail. And in the video, he's clearly not alert and conscious, right? His feet are dangling as these officers carry him and kind of stuff him into a police vehicle. And so I was insistent that we show the Attorney General this video on camera. Well, on camera,
just really what and this is kind of the crux of the thing that you're about to get to, but just another note for people, and maybe this is a different story and I'm mistaking it, but isn't it correct that this video was not released through official channels and by a FOIA or anything? This was released by an employee of the jail who felt like this is something that the family deserved to see, and then that employee was disciplined. Is that correct?
That's right. So this was a jail employee, actually a jail employee who had made Employee of the Month a couple of months earlier. So you can still go to Walker County's page and see like her Employee of the Month photo. But yeah, she saw the surveillance video from inside the jail of the way that Mr. Mitchell was being treated, and kind of took that, recorded on her phone some of that surveillance video, which eventually we obtained at CBS 42 and aired that video. But yeah, we showed that video to the Attorney General. In the initial interview with Ani Lindenberg there on CBS, he actually didn't see the video. So after the interview had concluded, he said, I actually didn't see that. So he still on camera. I actually didn't see that video. Can you roll it again for me? And so they roll the video again. And the Attorney General of Alabama, top law enforcement in the state, says, it appears to me he might be posturing. So this is a man who clearly is unconscious, is being placed into a vehicle to be brought to the hospital, and the Attorney General is speculating that he is posturing. right? So when I saw that video, I felt it needed to be released, right? He hadn't said anything about what happened to Anthony Mitchell of substance. He said it would be investigated, that type of thing. He said you can't trust a video that shows a single moment in time. But then once the interview had concluded, he made this comment about him posturing, and I felt like that was something that the folks of Alabama should see. So I tweeted that section of the interview with him, making those comments about Mr. Mitchell and news management. Did not agree with that decision, and so they chose to reprimand me, a written reprimand, and I chose to just go ahead and part ways and move into my work at Tread, which is what I'm working on now.
Yeah, and I think that was the right decision, and I think that it's really a shame that the people who are they would say leaders in the journalism industry in Alabama. I think representatives of Capitol might be a more accurate summary of their position, but it is really a shame that they did not feel like Alabamians deserve to see the Attorney General's initial reaction to this, which was, again, he knew the facts of the case in that he knew that this guy was found later dead of hypothermia. Sure. And the idea that you could see a couple hours before he's not alert and your first thought is that he's posturing is just wild. And yeah, folks deserve to know that.
Right, because I think it's very revealing of a particular mindset
yeah.
of Steve Marshall, our Attorney General. And yeah, I agree with Jacob. I applaud you for trying to do the right thing. As someone who has been retaliated against on the job for telling the truth, you have my sympathies, and I certainly know what it feels like. And more power to you. I really appreciate you taking your work seriously, because there's a responsibility that journalists have to tell the truth to the public. But unfortunately, business and politics gets in the way of that sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Lee, talk to us about your new project, Tread by Lee. Is that a Substack, or is that like a website that you have, or?
Yeah, so a website that's kind of based on Substack, and we have kind of branched out into doing as much coverage as we can. I'm only one person, but I'm trying to tell the stories that I was already telling at CBS. But kind of tell them in a more in-depth, long-form way, using original photography, original reporting to kind of bolster that reporting. But I'm doing kind of the same stories that I was doing before at CBS. So stories that are featuring folks that typically aren't heard from in the Alabama media, right? So one of the things, for example, that I've been trying to do more work on, a couple of topics, one of them being the death penalty. Death penalty is really important to me. Alabama is one of the few states that are conducting most of the executions in the country.
Right.
We've seen, most states aren't executing folks anymore, right? Most countries don't execute folks anymore. And so that's an issue that's important to me. Police shootings have been something that I've been covering recently for Tread that have been important to me. And that was also a theme while I was at CBS. So, talking to families who've been impacted by police violence. So another Walker County story just wrote a couple of days ago related to the Gardendale Police Department, which is a police department right outside of Birmingham, went outside their jurisdiction by like 30 miles to serve a narcotics warrant in Cordova, Alabama, over in Walker County. So they go around 6 a.m. to serve this search warrant for narcotics. They bust the door down, and a man and his family are inside. They told me in interviews afterward, the police didn't announce themselves. So when they come in, the individual in the house has armed himself with a legal weapon. He shoots at police, they shoot back, and they kill this man in front of his 9-year-old child, his wife, and his mother. Right? So this is a story where every other news outlet in the state had run headlines like, man who shot at police killed, something like that, right?
Right.
This was a man who was killed in front of his 9-year-old child.
Right.
And the headlines in every news outlet, folks can Google this at home, just Cordova shooting by police. All of these headlines are basically indicting this man of a crime that he can never be tried for, right?
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things I think is important to me as a journalist, and that I think other journalists should really try to do, is to make sure if police's statement is the only statement you have for a story, you don't have a story. You need to pick up the phone. You need to go knock on a door. You need to talk to someone who was there, right? So, when these types of stories get published in Alabama, you get a lot of pushback from some people in the public who say, well, he shot at police. Why are you, some folks have called me, well, why are you a biased reporter in this? Bias is telling the police's side without telling the other side, right? So I think that when I'll just encourage folks who are listening, when you read a news story, think about who is being interviewed in the story, who's being heard in the story, and why. If you're not hearing from somebody you think you should, there may be a reason for that, right? Tweet that author and ask them, why aren't you interviewing the family of the person who's been shot, right? Why aren't you interviewing anyone but police? Why is this story completely based on police statements? So I think, journalists have the primary responsibility here, right? We're the ones writing the stories. But I think, individual consumers of news also have a lot of power in terms of, where you click is where your money's going, right? Your attention is really valuable to people. You get what you pay for. If you're not paying for journalism, that means somebody else is paying for it. What's their agenda? So I think, those are a lot of questions that news consumers in the state need to ask themselves to make sure that you're not contributing to some of these issues when it comes to media coverage of very important issues like police violence, like the death penalty, things like that.
Is there any indication at all that these officers in Cordova are going to face disciplinary action or termination?
Not right now. So in this case, as in almost all cases of what police call officer-involved shootings, which is and you'll see that in headlines, and which is just translated to "we shot someone and we don't want to admit it."
Right.
So in all of those cases, basically what happens is the Alabama law enforcement agency takes over the investigation, and that becomes a black box, right? So I covered extensively a case here in Birmingham where the Birmingham Police Department shot and killed a young man named Keelan Cannell here in Birmingham. And that case, took forever for the Alabama law enforcement agency to come to their conclusion that it was a justified shooting. I've never seen a case, where Alabama law enforcement agency did not rule the shooting justified. There may be one out there somewhere. I'm not aware of it. So these cases take years to investigate, months and months, if not years to investigate. And then when ALEA comes out with their conclusion, it's almost always that the shooting was justified. So, like in the Birmingham case with Keelan Cannell, his mom still wants answers. This happened years ago, and I went to his funeral here in Birmingham and watched the grief that was caused by this police violence that police have never owned up to, have never apologized for, have never given answers about. So, these are the type of stories that are important to me, to make sure, not just in the short term, like this family in Cordova, their story has been told, if only by, my little news outlet. But it's also important to think like down the line, like you said, what are the consequences for these officers? What is ALEA's conclusion going to be? And so like following that story is what's important to me, and something that news outlets, aren't very good at, right? You don't necessarily always see the follow-up that you think you should.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the fact of the matter is that cops just never get, there's never any accountability for their actions. And even in, there was one that I'm thinking of in Texas where it was also a mistaken entry, and this person and this officer killed somebody, and Ted Cruz goes out there, saying that this officer shouldn't lose her job. She should be able to maintain her job. And in my estimation, even if we grant that there was no malice there, or your mistake your mistake killed somebody. You should never have a license to kill again because you can't handle it. You've proven that you can't handle it, and your mistake, somebody is dead because of your mistake, even if there was no malice there. And so just do something else, because, do some other type of work, right? It's not your right to be a cop. It seems to me that the least that ought to happen is if your mistake results in the death of somebody, you can never be a cop again. But of course, somehow it seems like, the people with power don't agree with that. So,
yeah, there seems to be, in Alabama at least, I think of this one case out of Talladega from a couple of years ago where we get a press release from the Alabama Law Enforcement Agency, kind of a typical thing where it's like there was a single vehicle crash in Talladega. A white Charger struck an individual, ran them over, and the individual died. So very typical press release. It was a really slow night, so I decided just to call Aaliyah to get some more information, maybe get the family of the person who died to interview the family, see a little bit more about who they were. I very quickly find out that the white Dodge Charger that had struck this person was a Talladega police cruiser.
Wow.
Aaliyah did not mention this in their press release. A press release that was, AL.com ran it, WBRC ran it. All the large media outlets in the state had run this story about, Brandon McFry, age whatever, dies after being struck by a car. The car was a police officer. It was in a police chase. I interviewed the entire family about, one of the individuals in the car, his fiance, literally tells me, I seen him get hit. That was her words. Why are we not hearing these stories? Right. So, obviously Aaliyah's at fault for not telling the public what happened in that case. The Talladega Police Department's at fault for not telling people what happened in the case. But the media, their job is to find out what actually happened, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm glad I picked up the phone and made that call, but what if I hadn't? Right. This family they're not going out to media outlets to try to get their story told necessarily, right? Like it's our job to tell those stories. And I think that, we're in a situation in Alabama where we don't have enough good journalists to tell the stories that need to be told. And we're in a situation of triage where we've got, we live in a semi-authoritarian state. The government, its policies are leading to harm for a lot of citizens. And it's our job as journalists to go out and to document that harm and tell folks, look, here's what is happening and here's why.
Yeah, absolutely. And here's a question that I'm pretty sure I know the answer to. Was that officer ever disciplined or terminated? In Talladega.
Oh, did we lose Lee?
Uh-oh.
No, he's back.
I'm back.
Okay, great.
Yeah, not that I'm aware of.
Not that you're aware of. Yeah, that's what I figured. Wild stuff.
Lee, I just want to say I really appreciate your comments, and I think it really resonates, and that's part of why we're doing what we're doing to amplify the voice of Southern labor, in particular the Alabama labor movement, because when it comes to working class people, the media is just not there for us. The media really doesn't work for us. It's not built for us. We're not represented in the media. And the media is not really interested in telling our stories in an authentic way. And so you see that time after time after time when there are struggles between workers and employers, and it's the employer side that gets told, right? It's the press releases from Warrior Met that gets read. It's not the struggles of the striking miner that's told. Mm-hmm. And so, I think what you're doing is really, really important. And I really appreciate what you're doing, and I think we do need much more quality journalism in the state. And there are some people doing good work. I don't want to suggest otherwise, but it's not enough. It's not enough, particularly given the conditions we live in. We as a state rank at or near the bottom of every aspect of quality of life, every aspect of our life and our society and our civilization. And so, there's just a need to tell the truth and a need to educate and agitate folks and inform folks. And so, yeah, I really appreciate your commentary.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Lee Hedgepeth, you can follow him on Twitter at Lee_Hedgepeth. You can follow his newsletter, Tread by Lee, on Twitter at Tread by Lee or treadbylee.com. Lee. treadbylee.com. Really appreciate it, man. Look forward to talking to you again.
Keep up the good work.
Thank y'all so much for having me.
Absolutely.
All right, folks, we're going to take a break, and we're going to be right back talking about some other Alabama headlines. You're listening to the Valley Labor Report. Stay tuned.
There's a lot of talk about a shortage of workers, but that's not the case with IBW 558. We have provided our customers over 3,000 workers and performed over 3 million man-hours in a pandemic year. With 8,000 OJT hours, 900 classroom hours, OSHA 30, and a state license, our members receive the equivalent of a master's degree. That's what makes IBW 558 the right choice for your electrical needs. Look us up at Facebook or at IBW558.org.
Support for this program is provided by the International Association for Machinists and Aerospace Workers, Local Lodge 44 in Decatur, Alabama. Learn more at IAMAW44.org.
Support for this program also comes from the Iron Workers, Local 477. So if you are looking for contractors with lower than average EMR and TRIR, they tell me that if you need to know what those mean, then you will. Or if you need to supplement a workforce at any level for any amount of time, short or long term, if you need iron workers that come trained and certified at no extra cost, or if you need workers from superintendent down to general laborer, and you're looking to start work on a project, or you're unhappy with your current contractor situation, you need to call my friend Jeb Miles with the Ironworkers Local 477. They only work with the best in the business, vetted contractors, and can do all kinds of jobs, from roofing to steel and bridge erection, from welding to heavy rigging, from structural repairs to machinery alignment, and much more. They supply manpower on 4 of the 5 largest projects in North Alabama, so you know they're legit. If you need good quality, safe, efficient, diligent, and knowledgeable workers on your job, then you need the Ironworkers Local 477. Call Jeb Miles at 256-383-3334 or via email at local477@bellsouth.net, and make sure you tell them that you heard about them on the Valley Labor Report.
We're the nurses, firefighters, and claims representatives that help keep our government services running. We respond to natural disasters. We care for our nation's veterans, and we investigate discrimination in the workplace. We are federal and D.C. government workers, and we are proud to serve the American people. Working in more than 70 agencies across the government, we know we can fulfill our mission because our union has our back. Learn more at afge.org. Paid for by the American Federation of Government Employees, AFL-CIO.
The Laborers International Union of North America, Local 366, is proudly recruiting North Alabama workers to work construction and nuclear plant maintenance. If you're interested, please contact Donna at their training center to start the process. That phone number is 256-415-7452. Again, that phone number is 256-415-7452. No experience is needed. Free training is offered, but you must be able to pass a background check and a drug test. Local hiring that grows our community with good-paying jobs that have benefits is their mission. Live better, work union, Local 366, feel the power.
Support for this program also comes from the Mid-South Council of Retail, Wholesale, and Department Store Union. Learn more at rwdsu.info.
I'm attorney Tommy Sinyard. When you've been injured and need help, you need a lawyer who's with you.
Sinyard Law. You need attorneys always available to take care of you. Sinyard Law.
And keep you in the loop. It's your case. You need to know what's happening.
Sinyard Law. And never a charge to meet with us to evaluate your case. Sinyard Law.
A new firm, but an old name. One that will stay with you every step of the way.
Sinyard Law. The name with proven results.
Do you work in an auto manufacturing plant? Are you tired of taking pride in your work without getting the respect you deserve? Consider joining the fight to unionize. Auto workers across the industry are coming together because with a union, we can negotiate for the pay, benefits, and security that we deserve and can help sustain our families. In union plants, workers bargain for long-term wage increases, competitive bonuses, and more affordable benefits. You can join the growing wave of organizing today. Find out more and contact us at Uniting Auto Workers on Facebook or contact UAW Region 8 in Lebanon, Tennessee by going to www.uawregion8.net. That's www.uawregion8.net. A better future is ours.
Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell. How the good old union has come in here to dwell.
Alabama's only union talk radio show. This is the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host is Adam Keller, and we have a phone number, and the line is open, folks. It's 844-899-TVLR. That is 844-899-8857. We appreciate the conversation happening in the chat. Vex the Cat asks, are there any unions or labor organizations in North and South Carolina? And North and South Carolina do have the, I think it's the lowest and then the second lowest union density rates in the country. But there are unions in there. And even that low density means that there are thousands of workers in each state that are members of unions, including at Smithfield Farms, I think is the name of the thing. And you can watch the documentary about how Smithfield workers won their union on Means TV, friends of the show. The documentary is called Union Time. Union Time is a documentary about workers in either North or South Carolina winning their union at Smithfield. Very cool documentary, and it's stuff that's happening in, I guess, presumably your neck of the woods, Vex the Cat, since you were asking about North and South Carolina.
I also wanted to mention, yes, you're right, South Carolina has the lowest union density. North Carolina isn't too far behind, though it seemed to be growing based on last year's numbers. But there's some good educator organizing happening in North Carolina. So want to shout that out. There is a reform caucus that's been organizing in North Carolina. So, despite the daunting numbers, there are folks doing good work and who are organizing. And so, yeah, hopefully y'all can be connected.
Perfect.
And for those of you who don't know, we do air live on WVNN, the right-wing talk radio station here in Huntsville, Athens listening area, every Saturday from 9:30 to 11, with our overtime airing at 11 o'clock, online only on YouTube and Facebook. We got our start on WVNN, which is the birthplace of Sean Hannity and home to all sorts of reactionary propaganda that we find objectionable. But we think it's important to get a different perspective out there to multiple audiences. We're happy that a portion of the show is replayed during the week on WZZA, the historic black radio station in Northwest Alabama, and on WHIV, a community radio station in New Orleans. We release the full episode on Spotify, Apple, and the various podcasting apps, so please subscribe to us on your app of choice and give us a good review. And throughout the week, clips of the show are released as standalone videos on YouTube and in some cases TikTok. So if there's a specific segment or interview you want to find, we do try to make it easy for you. Just do us a favor and hit subscribe and like. And all of our content is free. So special thanks to all of you who donate. all of you who comment and call in, and all of you who have liked us, shared us, and reviewed us. Your engagement on social media and podcasting apps really does help, and that's a quick, easy, and free way to support the program. If you believe it's important to have our own media of, by, and for the Southern working class, please consider supporting us however you can, and please share with your coworkers, friends, family, and neighbors. We know there's a lot of good causes to support, and our audience are working folks with limited incomes. So if you find value in our project and you're willing to chip in a couple bucks, it would really mean a lot. We've got some great stuff planned as we grow the project, and we can't do it without you.
That is absolutely the case, and appreciate that reminder, Adam. So let's talk about child labor in the South, and this is something that is, has been sort of a running thread through the show for the last several months. That child labor has just been rampant, not only through the South, but I mean through the country as well. We saw that in Iowa, they just passed a bill to allow 14-year-olds to work in coal mines. I mean, really rancid kind of stuff. It's just amazing that this kind of stuff is happening today. But the Department of Labor put out some stuff regarding the South in particular last week that we wanted to go over. And they said from 2020 to 2022, so just 2 years, the Southern Division of the Department of Labor assessed Southeastern employers more than $2.8 million in penalties, with violations of child labor law up 69% since 2018, and millions of minor-aged workers joining the U.S. workforce each year. Now, that's not millions of minor-aged workers working illegally. Some of those are in seasonal summer jobs in restaurant, retail, and amusement industries, and that is and has always been legal. So, when you hear people, trying to justify child labor and loosening child labor laws by saying, oh, I had a summer job and it didn't hurt me. Yeah, okay, that's true, and they can still do that. 16-year-olds can still work at the ice cream shop with proper parental consent. These laws, the loosening of these restrictions, go beyond that. The loosening of these restrictions are allowing children to work later on school nights, to allow children to work more than 8 hours in a day over the summer, and in Arkansas, one of the laws was allowed children to work without a parental consent form, which is really, frankly, all that is they ought to have named that one, that bill, the Child Trafficking Support Act. The Support of Child Trafficking Act, because that's all that does, right? If you allow children to work without a parental consent, without any form or anything, that is just, which is not to say that the form totally inhibits child trafficking. Of course it doesn't, but it makes it that much easier to fraudulently employ minor children that have been trafficked for the purpose of labor. Very, very wicked and rancid stuff being pushed by business interests and politicians across the country. But back to this report. Millions of minor-aged workers are joining the U.S. workforce each year, many in seasonal summer jobs in restaurant, retail, and amusement industries, which is legal and fine and always has been. The U.S. Department of Labor is actively working to educate Southeastern employers about their legal obligations and make sure that young employees are kept safe at work and paid fully, which is, something that's really wild that they have to put out there. But they talk about this webinar that they're putting on for employers about, hey, here's how you don't abuse children at work. This is, here's a crazy concept. Maybe you shouldn't abuse children that work for you. I don't want to hear any excuses from business owners that said that they weren't aware. Absolutely. There's free webinars.
Personal responsibility says and dictates that you should at least be taking the webinars from the Department of Labor.
Yeah, the free webinars.
How to pay your employees, what you promised them. How to not break laws.
How to not break laws.
How to not hurt children.
Yeah.
You know, very important concepts that are, you know, critical to the success of your business.
Yeah, very. But also, you know, to be fair to the business owners, very complex, I'm sure, to not break the law. But you know, so if you're a business owner out there and you are interested in taking advantage of minor aged labor over the summer, the Department of Labor has a webinar series that is free that you can take to show you how to not break the law. So there's, you know, something to consider there. Look it up on your own time. So from fiscal year 2020 to 2022, the division assessed employers more than $2.8 million in penalties and conducted more than 500 child labor investigations. This is, again, just across the South, affecting nearly 2,900 minors. These are minors that are working illegally, under illegal circumstances, whether they're working past the time. There's like, I think it's 7 or 8 o'clock. Children can't work past 7 or 8 o'clock if they have school the next day, and they can't work more than 8 hours in one day over the summer.
And just very, you know, the laws do vary from state to state, and, you know, depending on age, right? There's different regulations for 14 and 15-year-olds.
But that's what this Department of
16-year-olds and older.
Yeah,
right.
That's what the Department of Labor webinar is for business owners.
Right.
So, you know, definitely take that. But these are 2,900 children working illegally just in the South. In Alabama, Florida, Georgia, Kentucky, Mississippi, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Tennessee. Child labor violations were most commonly found in the restaurant, retail, construction, and amusement industries, but recent violations in the Southeast, auto manufacturing, and meat processing industries are alarming. Quoting from Wage and Hour Division Regional Administrator Juan Correa in Atlanta, federal child labor laws permit minors between 14 and 17 years of age to enter the workforce so long as the job complies with federal, state, and local child labor laws. In many of our investigations, the Wage and Hour Division found Southeast employers illegally allowing minors to work longer or more frequent hours. We also discovered minors under 18 were assigned to perform hazardous occupations by employers who failed to understand their legal obligation to protect young workers from these potentially dangerous tasks. In its investigations, the division commonly finds young workers under the age of 16 working outside of federally allowed hours, and workers under 18 assigned to prohibited or hazardous occupations, and employers failing to keep accurate records for youth workers. Correa added that, unfortunately, we sometimes learned that an employer violated the law only after a child suffers an injury. And that's one of the consequences of the right-wing assault on the government, on the actions of government. One of the consequences is that the Department of Labor does not have adequate staffing to routinely inspect and routinely give out these trainings to ensure that employers are following the law and ensure that workers are safe. One of the consequences is that sometimes the Department of Labor only learns about violations of child labor law after an injury. Correa added that failing to comply with the laws that protect minors' safety is irresponsible and illegal. Part of the division's focus on enforcement of child labor regulations is intended to prevent recent incidents involving injuries suffered by young workers, including the life-changing injuries suffered by an underage worker in Florida illegally employed to work on a roof, and hot oil burns sustained by a McDonald's worker illegally assigned to use a fryer in Tennessee. The U.S. Department of Labor is determined to prevent child labor violations and to stop employers from jeopardizing the safety of young workers or harming their ability to keep up with their schooling, Correa said. We encourage employers, young workers, and their parents and others to contact us with questions about federal child labor laws. The division offers many compliance resources, including a fact sheet on best practices for employing youth and its Youth Rules website for information on providing youth a positive and safe work experience. So I will give you a lifeline, business owners, if you're interested in employing children. They say, for more information about other laws enforced by the division or to report a violation, contact the toll-free helpline, 866-4-US-WAGE. That is 866-487-9243. Calls can be answered confidentially in over 200 languages. So that's a very important resource if you're a boss wanting to make sure that you're following the law, but also if you're a worker who has suspicions that your rights are being violated.
Right. Or if you see something, if you're aware of something, I am around schools a good bit, and just from what I overhear from high schoolers, I feel pretty confident that there are child labor law violations happening in North Alabama. It seems pretty likely.
Oh yeah.
I mean, just
absolutely.
Just for folks to know, you can search Alabama child labor laws, and you can find a one sheet poster there. It's not hard to find this information. If you are an employer, or if you are a worker, and again, you're not sure if your rights are being violated or your child's rights are being violated. I mean, just so you know, 16, 17, 18-year-olds should not be working after 10 p.m. or before 5 a.m. on a night preceding a school day. Should not be happening. Otherwise, the rules are pretty flexible. They don't have an hour restriction when school's not in session.
Oh, they don't here in Alabama.
They do not. If they're 16, 17, 18, no breaks are required. So, that's something that's worth noting. 14 and 15-year-olds do have more restrictions. No more than 3 hours on any school day. No more than 8 hours on a non-school day. No more than 6 days per week. No more than 18 hours per week. Not before 7 a.m. or after 7 p.m. on any day of the week. Not during school hours, of course. And that's when school is in session. Those rules are in place. But when school's not in session, no more than 8 hours a day or 6 days a week. No more than 40 hours per week. Not before 7 a.m. or after 9 p.m. each day. So for 14 and 15-year-olds, a documented 30-minute break is required if they are employed for more than 5 hours continuously. And that's a little bit about the child labor laws in Alabama. So
and David in the
should
chat,
follow them.
David in the chat, you should follow the child labor laws. David in the chat asks, why is it businesses stealing wages or endangering child workers is a civil crime, and yet stealing from business is criminal?
Absolutely.
Fines for them and jail for us. And that's absolutely an important thing to remember when you think about employers. I read from this press release, literally actually harming children in life-impacting, life-changing ways.
Right.
An underage worker being employed illegally to work on a roof. Injuries suffered by this person. Hot oil burns sustained by a McDonald's worker illegally assigned to use a fryer. These are not, these are and if I did this to my, if I had a kid and I burned them with hot oil, or I was responsible for them and I allowed them to fall off the top of a roof, I would be sent to jail. I would have my kid taken from me.
DHR would be sniffing around your place. It would be a whole fiasco. And it's a real double standard there. And we see the double standard in terms of wage theft versus retail theft.
Right.
Our Alabama legislators, in all their wisdom, are actually trying to make it make even more punishments for shoplifting. Because of alleged shoplifting rings that they're concerned about, and they want to be able to add even more charges to people and incarcerate more people over shoplifting. Right. But this kind of criminal activity by bosses and employers, which is damaging children, which is stealing from people, it's just a civil penalty.
Yeah.
It's a real double standard, and it's an injustice in our criminal justice system.
Yeah, real freak stuff. I mean, just real freak stuff. We do have a caller on the line, but caller, we're going to bring you on in overtime. You wanted to plug this this thing about the HB 209 before we wrapped up here.
Yeah,
right, Adam?
Absolutely. Yeah, because HB 209 is a bill that's really got me bothered. It's something that has irritating me, but it's not just me. It's the Alabama Voting Rights Coalition. It's the League of Women Voters of Alabama. It's, many nonpartisan, nonprofit groups. This is not just radicals such as myself who are out here against this bill. House Bill 209 would criminalize providing absentee voting assistance. Okay, so folks who are elderly, folks who are disabled, folks who are ill, folks who are having some kind of issues and need assistance with absentee voting. Your friend, your family member, your neighbor, your church member, your union member that you may want to help. Maybe you need to give them a ride to go pick up their ballot. Maybe you pick up, the application for them. However, they may need some assistance to exercise their right to vote. That could be criminalized. That could be criminalized with a felony charge. So, the League of Women Voters and other nonpartisan groups, they help people exercise their rights to vote, particularly those who, need to vote absentee for whatever reason, and may have some challenges in doing that because of disabilities or other issues going on. Okay, and the activities of like these sweet old ladies who go out and do this work, and I'm stereotyping, but by and large, that's what I've observed is typically it's retired folks who really are passionate about people's right to vote. They like to register people to vote. They help people vote absentee. They just want to help people exercise their rights. And, these folks are going to be risking a felony charge. Much of their activity would no longer be permitted. Every union, in our union, of course, our goals is to advance the interest of our worker members in the workplace. But part of what we also do is try to have political influence. We try to make sure all of our members have the ability to exercise their right to vote in local, state, and national elections. And again, we shouldn't risk a felony charge by doing that work, by helping our union members vote. It's just, it's just wild. And there is no legitimate evidence of any wrongdoing that this bill is seeking to address. And that's Alabama legislature, just classic behavior, an imaginary problem, and a bill that's supposed to fix this imaginary problem that creates many very real problems.
Yeah.
And that's what this is all going to do with HB 209. So I'm really asking folks to contact your state senator. It has already passed the state house. Just sad that it's already passed the state house. So contact your state senator. Let them know you're against HB 209 because you value a democratic society and you believe people should be able to vote and people should be able to help each other vote free of, criminalization.
And with that, we're going to wrap up the show on the radio. I am still tracking you, caller, and we'll bring you on once we get into overtime. So just hang in there for about 5 more minutes. Just a reminder, Labor Notes is doing good trainings every week. You can find that on labornotes.org. The Alabama International Finge Festival is taking place May 12, 13, and 14 in the River region. And there's going to be a union musical, so check that out. Shop Talk airs on Thursday mornings. Make sure that you tune in on YouTube for that. And give us a call at 844-899-8857. And we might bring you on the air or respond to your voicemail in the next week. We're going to be heading into overtime, where we are actually going to be talking to the cast behind the musical Toll Puddle about Union struggles in 1800s England and a lot of other stuff, so you don't want to miss it. With that, we're going to roll out All Power to the Workers. See you next week. All right, folks, we're off the radio. Appreciate you staying with us. Thank you very much for your time. Like I said, we've got some cool stuff headed into in overtime. We're going to be talking about the WGA strike as well. First, we'll get to our caller, and then we're going to be talking to the cast of Toll Puddle. So really looking forward to that. Make sure you stay tuned. You're listening to the Valley Labor Report.
Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell. How the good old union has come in here to dwell. Go to Harlan County, there is no neutral there. You'll either be a union man or a thug party age player. Which side are you on? 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 Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell. How the good old union has come in here to dwell. Which side are you on? 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 Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell. How the good old union has come in here to dwell. Go to Harlan County, there is no neutral there. You'll either be a union man or a thug party age player. Which side are you on? 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 Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell. How the good old union has come in here to dwell. Which side are you on? 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 Which side are you on?
Folks, welcome back. You are listening to the Valley Labor Report, Alabama's only union talk radio show, and we are now in overtime, the second half of the program where we have freed ourselves from the shackles of the FCC censors. We are online only in overtime. But you can find the online overtime segment on Unclaimed Mysteries Radio. That airs the following Friday morning at 9 a.m. on Unclaimed Mysteries Radio. So if you're hearing us there, appreciate it. Just search Unclaimed Mysteries Radio on Live 365, and you'll get an assortment of local Huntsville music and commentary. So that's a neat little project that's going on here that we are happy to be a part of. And there was we did get a question about the song. What version of Which Side Are You On is it that we use? And it is I think it's like the only recording of Florence Reese actually singing it. I don't know if there's multiple recordings. I think it's the only one. She's singing it, I think, at some union function. And then Jules Taylor, the producer of the Working People's podcast, he remixed it. He put put a little bit of banjo there because she sung it a cappella. So he put a little bit of music behind it, and we use that for our our show and our intro and outro music and stuff like that. I wonder if maybe I can send it to Joe, send that file to Joe, and he can do like a little music video thing, like where they have those lyric music videos, that they do.
Right.
Maybe
that would be cool.
Yeah, maybe he'd be interested in that. I don't know. We'll see. The song name is Which Side Are You On? But you're not going to be able to find it with the music that we have behind it. You're not going to be able to find that because it was we commissioned it and it was made specifically for us. But feel free to download the video. Once we go live, I think you should be able to just download the live show, and you can cut that 3 minutes if you want to have that song like in your collection or something.
But yeah, I do like the idea of a music video featuring the song, because we do get a lot of positive feedback about it. So I second that motion.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I just want to shout out Jules Taylor. He is the one that did the remix. He's a producer of the Working People's podcast, and he is very reasonably priced if you need any music commissioned for a project. Then you can reach out to him. So we've got a caller on the line, and it's Joe from Decatur. How you doing, Joe? Haven't heard from you on the show in a while.
Well, I didn't want to take up all your time, Jacob. Y'all always got something pretty interesting going on. I don't want to butt in, but last week I listened to the show, and of course it was a lot about Workers' Memorial Day, and I just jotted me down a few notes, and y'all happened to mention that lack of inspections by OSHA is real slack, and of course there's a reason for that: underfunded, not enough agents, blah. But I just wanted to point out a couple of things that workers get involved in. That's probably detrimental to their own welfare, and that's things like OSHA-sponsored voluntary participation programs, and probably everybody's heard of VPP, where employees form committees, blah, and look at jobs and so forth, so on, and then they get OSHA to come in on a voluntary thing to interview employees, so forth, so on. And see if they qualify for one of their star sites for VPP. Well, basically, what that does in the long run, yeah, you get a lot of members and employees at the non-union shops to participate in those things. But what it actually does is when people complain to OSHA enough about their work site, that could be reason for OSHA to come in on an unannounced inspection. Of course, the companies, they can't stand that. But what VPP does is, if you qualify, is guarantee you no surprise inspections since you're a VPP site. If you look at the things that y'all mentioned last week, the TIR, total incident rate, which is where they have to keep up with injuries and so forth. The TIR will also trigger, if it gets high enough, and inspection. Therefore, companies have found ways to water down what has to be reported. Somebody gets cut, and they go to the medical department or the nurse or whatever, and their first thing is, well, how can we keep this off the books for the TIR? I just wanted to mention that. And then I also wanted to mention that these companies who offer gain sharing programs, profit sharing programs, they also want to tie those to injuries on the job. You can be coasting along there for 3 months and fixing to get your so-called gain sharing check, and all at once, it might look like you're going to get a pretty fair one, and the company decides, okay, this accident right here is one that we're going to make sure we get recorded, and then they start deducting from your gain sharing, which that's a whole nother story. But what it does do is encourages workers not to report accidents for that very reason.
Right.
Now I'm not gonna beat up on that, but wanted to mention a couple of things in the Alabama legislators, and y'all talked about it last week, and the first one was the grocery tax.
Mm-hmm.
And I was hoping to actually get on the radio because the whole thing about the grocery tax, I believe, and I could be wrong, but I believe most Alabamians think, okay, they're going to take the tax off of groceries. Therefore, in most cities now, the total tax rate is about 10%, 4% of it going to the state.
Mm-hmm.
So we're talking about a 4% reduction in the tax rate on groceries. And what they've done in the legislature has passed it in the House, and I don't think it's gone to the full Senate yet. But they make Alabamians think that, hey, this is a real big deal. But if you really look at it, the way it's working right now under their legislation is they're going to reduce it by 0.5% the first year, and then incrementally step it back, I guess, till they reach that 4% if they don't change their mind. But if you really take the 0.5% off of 4%, an individual goes to the grocery store and spends $200 on groceries. If all of them items are taxable, what it really winds up being on a $200 grocery bill is $1.
Right.
Now that's just using pretty simple math, and a dollar ain't much of a tax break. Now come on, don't you
right.
know? It's really pathetic to lead the Alabama voters to think, hey, we're fixing to get cut a 10% tax off our groceries, because that's really not what it is.
Right.
And then, so I think it's pretty deceiving the way they put that out, and most people don't really even look. They don't really even realize that it only equals about $1 on $200.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and not only that, but this bill, I think it actually doesn't even. The end of this bill is not even the full 4%. It's only up to 2%, right, Adam? That's the max. And then it only, you mentioned, Joe, that it goes 0.5% each year, but it only goes 0.5% each year if the education trust fund revenue increases by no less than 3%. So if the education trust fund revenue does not increase by at least 3% next year, then the 0.5% increase does not even happen. It's stalled until the next year. So yeah, it's very, very small beans.
Convoluted because it's just too hard for them to do common sense right things.
Yeah.
And so we got to make it difficult and jump through hoops to get somewhere close to something positive. And then it never amounts to, what's promised.
Yeah, but Joe, we are going to be pre-taping for May the 13th because of my wedding, and so what I'll do is I'll clip this bit where you're talking about the grocery tax, and we'll put it on for the radio portion next week.
Well, I'd just like for folks to really know what it really amounts to. It ain't like you spend $100 and you save $10 in taxes, because it don't do that at all. I mean, it's far from that. The other couple of things, one other thing I want to mention, and then I'll get off the phone, is the overtime tax. Now y'all gonna have to correct me on this, but I really find it difficult to agree with the overtime tax on your wages not be included in taxes. And the reason I say that, if you want to help the vast majority of Alabama workers, and why ain't they not taxing the first 40 hours? Where you're going to actually probably be working 40 hours if you got a full-time job. If you're working less than full-time, you get absolutely no effect from it whatsoever. But my real problem with it is, and I've witnessed this myself and I've lived it myself, people who work a lot of overtime, whether that be voluntary or mandatory, the more overtime, and like I say, I've witnessed this with my own eyes, the more overtime people work, the less employees they got to have in the long run. I mean, really and truly, to me that's a problem. To me that's kind of going backwards when we, even though the unemployment rate is so-called 3.5% now, if times get a little rougher, and these companies want to remain competitive, so forth, then if they start laying off some workers, but at the same time forcing the rest to work overtime, i.e. West Rock down south that was on strike, to me we're going backwards on that, Jacob. I mean,
we really should not be. I mean, we shouldn't be incentivizing people. We shouldn't be incentivizing workers to work more than 40 hours a week, and we certainly shouldn't be incentivizing employers to work their workers more than 40 hours a week. I mean, really, I totally agree that the focus should be on how do we make sure that people are able to get what they need to have a good life within 40 hours, so that they can actually have 8 hours for what they will, right? and 8 hours for rest.
Exactly.
And that's, it's amazing that that's becoming kind of a radical concept again, that people ought to have 8 hours for what they will in the day. And we're going to be talking to this cast of Toll Puddle here in just a second about some of these fights from 1800s England, where they were fighting for the right to a 16-hour day and the right to a 12-hour day and the right to a 10-hour day, right? So yeah. Well, I really appreciate it, Joe. Always good to hear from you, and always really good stuff to say.
Let me just mention one more thing, and I'll make it really quick. Both of these tax bills that I'm talking about, I think that was really bipartisan support on both of them.
The overtime tax, the overtime one was actually introduced by a Democrat.
Absolutely. I absolutely do not understand that. You know, I'm a yellow dog Democrat, period, and always will be. But I certainly don't think it was very well thought out. but I also think that it's just another thing that does get some statewide interest from your average guy who don't pay much attention to the legislator anyway. But it's a way for them to get some attention, like they're really doing something big for us. They promoting this kind of stuff while they're stabbing us in the back on the voting rights. Jacob, I'll let y'all go. Hey, Adam, just keeping with progressive corrective discipline, you was late Thursday, man. So
I know. I know.
You can just
verbal warning.
consider this an oral reprimand. Yeah, you can just consider this an oral reprimand. But
I appreciate the heads up, Joe, and I'll talk to my rep in the meantime.
You know I'm kidding. But
I know, brother. I appreciate it, man.
All right. Talk to y'all later, man.
Have a good one.
Brother. Have a good one.
All right. Bye-bye.
Yeah, well, that was Joe from Decatur. Is a great guy. Really a leader in the labor movement here in North Alabama. Former steel worker, retired out of the Cortland, Alabama International Paper Mill. Great. Really enjoy and I really feel honored to have him as somebody that I can call and call a friend and call for advice and he's definitely a good asset to folks. And if there's anybody, any young person out there that is, that has any questions, maybe from somebody who's been around the block, I'm sure that Joe would be willing to talk to you. So if you want to be put in touch, reach out to me. So Adam, we've got those folks from Toll Puddle on the Zoom, right?
I believe we still have them on the Zoom. Let me check here. And we also do have a clip from the musical too. We can play. So I'm not sure if you wanted to do that first before the interview or...
Yeah, well, let's play this. And they are still on the Zoom?
Yeah, I'm not seeing them, but I think they're still here.
Okay, good deal. Yeah, go ahead and we can bring them into the room and we'll start by playing this clip here.
Awesome. Yeah, so just to set this up, this is a musical that is going to be taking place next weekend in Montgomery area. And this was put together during the pandemic, the clip at least. So they had some limited, resources in putting this together, but I think it was very impressive nonetheless. So this is from Toll Puddle, the musical.
Toll Puddle 6, you stand accused before this court for forcing a secret oath not authorized by law. It is a crime to force an oath that doth purport to keep a man from testifying what he swore. We will be free. Toll Puddle 6, sit down and get used to those chains. We men of the jury are the laws you hope to cheat. No one can help you, only have yourself to blame. We have your friend and Edward Lake here at our feet. We will be free.
They knocked on my window round Christmas last. It was Brian and Hammett, that's when they asked if I'd come to Stanfield's house to join them both. That's where we swore that oath. They gave me a blindfold so I couldn't look at who made me swear as I kissed the good book. My soul would be plunged to eternity if I broke my secrecy.
We will be free. Was it James Lovelace that cajoled you in this way? Please take a moment to consider what you say.
I think it could have been.
I speak for Stanfield, Hammett and Brine, and note how this crime is defined. Is meant to prevent planning mutiny, not this friendly society. I speak for the other 3 Toll Puddle men you accuse of seditious intent. Would evil people collect a few bob for those who could lose their job? If we sinned, it wasn't intentionally. We injured no person, no property. Just try to provide for our family. Against degradation, to stop their starvation. Can you prove our intention counters this statement? Men of the jury, now it's time you must agree. Was there an oath that bound these men to secrecy? The rest is irrelevant, so please don't be confused. How do you find these men of what they are accused? Guilty, guilty. Topot of 6, I have considered your defense, that no one was harmed and that you meant no ill intent. But as an example to all other working men, you'll serve 7 years of transportation starting hence. We raise the watchword liberty. We will be free. We raise the watchword liberty. We will be free. Topot of 6, you face a sentence worse than death. If you survive the journey, you'll resent your breath. Be an example to the nation's working men. Those who think to organize will have to think again. Topot of 6, you face a sentence worse than death. If you survive the journey, you'll resent your breath. Be an example to the nation's working men. Those who think to organize will have to think again. We raise the watchword liberty. We will be free.
Hi guys, thanks so much for having us on. We really appreciate it. Yeah, I'm here with our lead cast member, Matthew Givens, who plays George Lovelace in the musical. So the other cast members are actually over on the stage performing and rehearsing, and I pulled Matt aside to kind of get to chat with you guys today. So hi guys. Yeah, so I'm Ryan Thornhill. I'm the director. I'm actually a London-based director who flew in to work on this project here in Alabama. So I'm also the festival director for the Alabama International Fringe Festival, which is what is happening next weekend and what Toll Puddle is performing as part of. And Toll Puddle tells the story of these 6 martyrs, the Toll Puddle martyrs from the south of England, who wanted to create a union because they were being treated unfairly by their landowning masters, as they call them, and they wanted to start a union. And when the masters started hearing word of these unions being formed and things like that, they actually set up all of these charges for these 6 men, tried them, convicted them, and sent them to Australia to work as field masters as well as part of the conviction. And this is just the story of of them, their journey, how they get to Australia, how they come back, and then how they ultimately wind up in Canada to kind of restart their lives. So yeah, the festival, another product of the pandemic. We are a collective of people from around the globe, really, who have been working over Zoom for the past few years to get this festival set up here in the river region. And we chose the river region because it has a very vibrant art scene all across the board, performing arts, visual arts, everything, and a very, very high caliber of community theater. So that's why we chose this area to set it up in. And it's going to be running next weekend, like you said. Toll Puddle's performing at Prattville's Way Off Broadway Theater Friday night. And then all day Saturday and all day Sunday, we will be at the Shakespeare Garden at the Alabama Shakespeare Festival with live full stage performances all day Saturday, all day Sunday, and then a gospel concert happening on the Great Lawn next to the pond at Alabama Shakespeare Festival. On Sunday morning, there'll be food trucks. We'll have local churches coming and performing. And that's really kind of what's setting us apart from the other fringe festivals from around the country, is this, where we are in the Bible Belt of the South, and we wanted to include the local churches and the gospel into the festival as well, just because of where we are. So we have that happening as well. And then there's also a film festival happening in downtown Prattville, and what we're calling our Live Stories event, which is fascinating people that we have come across that have fascinating stories, basically just performing a monologue of their life for us. And that'll happen in downtown Prattville. So there's a lot happening next weekend here in the river region. So we're very, very excited about it.
It sounds like it's going to be a really great event, and I am definitely a big fan of gospel music and unions and so mixing the two is really, it's almost like y'all are trying to put this on specifically for me. But the actor that you have with you, I'm interested in hearing from him as well, and what got you into the theater, and how have you felt rehearsing for this particular production?
Well, I actually got into theater back in 2005. My daughter was in theater in high school, and she wanted to audition for a community theater production, but she was nervous. So we said, yeah, we'll go with her, and we'll support. So I got cast in My Fair Lady. I played Helfrid P. Doolittle, Eliza's father. Yeah, that's me. So after that, we just kept doing theater. I've been doing theater ever since, and I really enjoy it. This is a very interesting show. I've done some historical based things before, but nothing like this, and it's really interesting. The fact that it's an all original musical was very attractive to me. The fact that we're performing in Alabama Shakespeare Festival, that was a real bonus. And as you said, the material it's really good, because Toll Puddle actually illustrates all of the reasons, goes back to the roots of the unions, and illustrates why they were formed in the first place. These men were getting paid enough to support their families, but they also had the common lands that they could plant their crops. Well, what happened was the master took that right away. You can't plant crops for your own use in the common land anymore, which means they didn't have enough money to feed their families, and they were actually pushed into it. When they asked for a raise, they actually got a pay cut. This illustrates exactly why the unions were formed in the first place. So they formed the unions, and then they were convicted on trumped up charges. And one interesting thing from the play that I liked was when they were in Australia for 7 years, the union actually supported their families. because that was one of the promises. If you get in prison, we'll support your families while you're in prison, and they did. So I mean, it's a really, really powerful and telling story. I mean, people will come to see it. It's all original music, and some of these songs are absolutely gorgeous. We have some marvelous vocalists. It'll be a great experience.
Awesome. Well, y'all, I really appreciate y'all taking the time to talk to us about it. Ryan, remind folks where and when they can go to the festival and when Toll Puddle will be playing specifically.
And before you do that, though, I just want to say I really appreciate it, and I love the entire festival idea and the concept, and I hope to see a lot more of it in Alabama. So y'all, I hope it's very successful this year. Jacob's got his wedding going on, so both of us are a little tied up this Saturday. And I hate that we can't make it, but I really encourage our listeners to check it out if you're, anywhere close to the area. It sounds like it's going to be fantastic and a little something for everybody. So y'all check that out. And yeah, Ryan, remind us all the details.
So yeah, the 2023 Alabama International Fringe Festival kicks off Friday, May 12th at Way Off Broadway Theater in downtown Prattville with Toll Puddle, the musical, at 7:30. Toll Puddle performs also at the Alabama Shakespeare on Saturday at 1:30 and Sunday at 7 p.m. and also Saturday at 5:30. So we do 3 performances of Toll Puddle at the Shakespeare Garden. Another thing I kind of wanted to mention at 7:30 p.m. on Saturday night, we have a play reading of a new musical, Wilson Pickett, His Life, His Music, His Legacy. And I like to mention that because we are in Pickett land, him native of Prattville. With the Wilson Pickett Festival just happened a few weeks ago, we got them to come back to perform again for this Fringe. So we're really excited about that. But yeah, join us next weekend. It's just going to be a weekend full of fun, art, and exciting performances.
All right. Really appreciate your time, y'all.
Thanks,
Good
y'all.
Thank you,
Break
guys.
a leg. Break a leg.
Good luck, y'all.
Thank you, guys.
All right.
Awesome.
Speaking of art and labor, 11,000 writers are on strike right now.
That's right.
11,000 writers are on strike in the first writer's strike since 2007. So over 15 years since we've had a writer's strike. The WGA voted 97.5% or 98.5% to go on strike.
Wow. Well, that's pretty overwhelming.
Pretty overwhelming, I would say. And some of the conditions are really, it's one of the things that you'll hear if you listen to a lot of these interviews of these writers is that it's becoming more and more difficult and in many ways all but impossible to actually be a middle-class writer anymore. You basically are poor and scrapping together, working all the time and just barely eking out a living, or you are, you have inherited wealth and so that doesn't matter, or you're one of the, 1% that make it
the
big.
top of the top.
Right. And so it's really, whereas before there really was, there was an industry of there are good paying middle class jobs for writers that a lot of people can occupy. And it's just, that's
and let's
becoming,
not forget that entertainment is a huge industry.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
In the billions of dollars industry, and
right.
There's a lot of money being made off this labor.
Absolutely. And I think the thing that the writers have really latched onto is the residual pay. There are several demands, but the residual pay seems to be one of their biggest issues. And the way that writers were paid before, and they're still paid now, which is part of the problem, is that they would get, an upfront cost, a fee for their labor, but then every time the show aired, so Friends had a long shelf life after its run. I mean, it's still probably being played on, Nick at Night or something, reruns. And so every time a Friends episode airs, all of the writers, all of the actors, I think probably I mean, I don't know, I'm not going to speak out of turn, but definitely the writers and the actors, they get residuals. So they get a portion of the proceeds because somebody is still paying to put advertisements in this rerun of Friends, right? And so when these people pay to put advertisements in the reruns of Friends, that the payment from that advertisement gets split between all the people that are involved in the production of that episode. Not equally, but it gets split. And that is worked out by the various unions and stuff like that. And so before, you were residuals were like a really big, you made a lot of money off of residuals. And now with streaming, there's less and less money coming from advertisement and more coming from subscription service. And so the residuals don't work the same way. And then on top of that, they're getting less residuals for every time you rewatch on Netflix. But then on top of that, one of the things that writers are saying that production studios are doing is instead of allowing a property to stay on their streaming service and be rewatched, meaning that they'll have to continue paying residuals, they just take it off. They just totally take it off of the website.
Yeah, and that is so crazy to me and so frustrating. I mean, it's frustrating as a customer because you think, like, this literally cannot be costing you any money to host on your platform. Like, it's not like taking up shelf space in a retail store. Right. Which even that is kind of, pretty minimal cost. But it's just wild. Yeah, the fact that they're taking that off. And I've been really... That's one of the, the talking points I've had with folks in conversations about this writer's strike. And it really seems to, to resonate with folks because it irritates the customer while screwing over the worker.
Right.
And, God, yeah, it's amazing they hit that sweet spot, right?
Yeah, it is. They're really getting screwed over. And there was one interview that I saw from a writer on More Perfect Union that said that for a project that they worked on, if it was similarly successful before the streaming era, they would have made $20,000 in residuals, and but instead they made $23.
Wow.
And so, that really shows you that's probably an extreme example, and that disparity is not going to happen just a whole lot. But that kind of illustrates to you the problem. And then, but overall, writers, when you account for inflation over the past 20 years, have seen a 23% decrease in their salaries, in the amount that they're paid. And so they're really fighting a lot of battles, but they have some other demands, and so I'll read some of these to you from the WGAs. Like, they're being really public with the way that they're negotiating, and so they have this list of things that they're wanting addressed in their proposals. And so one of them is increasing the minimum compensation to address the devaluation of writing in all areas of television, new media, and features. And so that is going to basically shift a lot of the compensation from the residuals from the lifetime of the product to the front end, since they're not making residuals as much. Also, standardizing the compensation and residual terms for features, whether released theatrically or on streaming. Addressing the abuses of mini rooms, which I've not heard as many interviews with writers about these, but basically it's they're cutting staff, right? And that's basically the crux of it, is they're using mini rooms, mini writers' rooms to cut staff. They also want to ensure appropriate television series writing compensation throughout the entire process of pre-production, production, and post-production. And so one of the things that I've seen there is that, like, there's just a lot of work that actually goes unpaid before you start getting paid for it. And then there are some times that you do all this unpaid work and then you don't get paid for it because the project never gets the green light. They want to also expand span protections to cover all television writers. Not sure what that means, to be completely honest. They want to apply MBA minimums to comedy variety programs made for new media, increase residuals for undercompensated reuse markets, restrict uncompensated use of excerpts. They have some pension plan and health funds. They want increased contribution to that. And they want some professional standards. So they want to require weekly payment of compensation and a minimum of 2 steps for feature contracts in which compensation falls below a specified threshold. They want to strengthen regulation of options and exclusivity in television writer employment contracts. They want to regulate use of material produced using artificial intelligence, which is very important. They want to enact measures to combat discrimination, and they want to revise and expand all arbitrator lists. And so there's you can see there's a lot of things there that some of those are kind of in the weeds for people that are not writers, but there's a lot of stuff that's really easy to understand. And the crux of it is that they're trying to cut staff, they're trying to cut pay and increase hours worked and have more flexibility over their workforce, which is just not good for the worker. And so they're fighting back against this, and of course we support them, and we are certainly hope to see them successful. And Adam Conover, we're going to be playing a clip from him in just a second, but he mentioned on CNN. And we're not going to play this clip, but it's a good one if you want to look it up. Adam Conover on CNN recently, he talked about how the CEO of Warner Brothers, which is just one of the big media companies, makes more money, if I'm remembering right. And you can go look up this CNN clip, and maybe when we clip this segment, I'll have Joe actually put it in. But the CEO of Warner Brothers makes more money than if the employers agreed to all of the conditions that the writers are asking for all 11,000 of them. So, the writers have these proposals. They have these, they want to, they have a certain percentage they want to increase residuals to. They want to increase minimums, all this stuff. The union has calculated how much that would cost, and across all 11,000 writers across the entire industry. And this one person makes more money than all of the increased costs combined.
I mean, he makes $250 million.
$250 million. One guy.
Warner Brothers Discovery CEO, David Zaslav.
Yeah, really, really crazy stuff. So this is absolutely not a situation of they don't have the money, the industry is not successful enough to pay these people what they're asking for. The money's there. It's just going to, millionaires and billionaires instead of the people who actually do the work, right? Because, and some of the people on the picket line have been mentioning this, when you put CEOs in a creative's job, you get something like Quibi, this totally failed experiment in short form content that was completely directed by business freaks instead of writers and artists and things like this. So we want writers to be driving the artistic production in television and all this kind of stuff. And so it's important that this strike succeeds. And so Adam Conover talked about the experience of being on the picket line, actually, and it was really cool. So I wanted to play it for y'all here.
First action, and there was a moment, a week or two ago, where I was like, I don't want to go on strike. There's other shit I want to do. I got my career I want to worry about. I got a podcast, I'm making videos, I want to pitch to TV shows. I don't want to do this. None of us want to be here, right? But as it became clear that this is what they were going to force us to do, it started to feel to me to be a really beautiful opportunity, because we all really feel like the world is fucked up, that like things are wrong in America, and we have the opportunity here to go and actually fix one of them with our collective action. Like, the Guild is asking me to come out here every day and picket for 4 hours. And if I do that, I can help stop Teamster trucks from going into that building, and we can halt productions, and that'll shorten the strike, and that'll make them come to the table, and that'll make them cut the workers in on their profits, and I get to actually move the boulder of how fucked up things are in America by showing up here with a sign. That's incredible. How many issues are there that you care about, that you would like to do something about, but there's nowhere you can show up with a sign to do it? You can't show up with a sign to climate change. You can go join Sunrise Movement and stuff like that, right? But like, we don't get these opportunities often in life to step up and actually fucking do something, and it's incredible.
really cool stuff from Adam Conover there. Really appreciate that. Really great testimony about the power that striking brings you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also want to lift up an article by Alex Press, published by Jacobin. I thought that was a really good article that they put out. And, they talked about some of the other unions that have been active on the picket lines, including the Screen Actors Guild, the Directors Guild of America, and, of course, my union, the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees, IATSE. So, definitely sending my solidarity with all of our sisters and brothers with WGA. Hope the writers get the fair contract that they deserve.
Absolutely. And just for your, just to contrast, the two sides, right? Because there are two sides, and so there is a question of which side are you on. And so we've talked about the writers and what they're asking for and what they're getting, and there's that testimony there from Adam Conover. And so just for your contrast here, I have clipped the this week's Rich Dick segment from Means Morning News, where they highlight the chief negotiator for the bosses in this fight. So Adam, let's play that.
Lombardini is the head of the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers, and she's the lead negotiator on behalf of Capitol in the labor fight against Hollywood writers. Just 2 days before the studio's contract with the Writers Guild of America was about to expire, Lombardini offered the union a crummy deal that all but assured a strike. Variety reported on the negotiations and Lombardini's proposal, quote, "It did not include key elements that the Writers Guild of America has insisted are essential to sealing a new 3-year contract, including a mandatory minimum number of weeks for TV writers and a minimum staff size for writers' rooms." Now, this isn't Lombardini's first rodeo. She was an executive with the AMPTP, number 2 in command, in fact, during the last writer's strike in 2007, which lasted 100 days. We're now on day 4 of this one, and Lombardini is reportedly just antagonizing the writers now. Union members familiar with negotiations said that when pressed on setting minimums on duration of employment, Lombardini replied, quote, "Writers are lucky to have term employment." Wow, just straight up insulting your workforce. If they're so lucky to be employed, then why don't you write your own damn scripts, Carol? Let's see how that one goes. Can't wait to see how you nail the end of Yellow Jackets. Oh, it was all a dream. Wow, so talented. Look, the story here is quite simple. The major studios are money-making machines, earning billions in profit every year. And they've used the transition to streaming to undercut their workforces by denying them hours and limiting compensation through residuals. As a result, the average writer-producer pay has declined 23% over the last decade, accounting for inflation. You think Carol Lombardini has seen her pay decrease over the last decade? Hell no. It's time to end the gross profit seeking and pay the dang writers.
That's exactly right. It's time to pay the dang writers. Friend of the show, Dripped Out Trade Unionists at Union Drip on Twitter mentioned that just a funny happenstance, the CEO of UPS is also named Carol.
Ah, well, imagine that. Yeah. Well, it's really important that these writers get a good contract. Entertainment is such a big component of the American economy. I mean, you think about it, what does America make these days? Manufacturing is not what it used to be. It's entertainment. It's one of the biggest products that we consume in this country and that we export to other countries. And so, these writers definitely, sending our love and solidarity to them and wishing them all the best in this struggle. Hopefully it will be a victory very soon. And again, just want to lift them up.
Yeah. Adam, you had Cop City. We haven't talked a whole lot about that, but obviously we are. I don't think that we've been shy about our criticism of the police state, and we of course oppose the construction of Cop City, and we stand in solidarity with all the protesters out there. And it's really just a shame what's happening, and the idea that they would be spending so much money and so much political capital and so much resources trying to oppose the will of the people in this community who clearly do not want Cop City to be built, and the idea that the people in power are just trying to roll over them is really gross. We are a union radio show, and so it's worth noting that the people who have been hired to construct Cop City, according to organizers over there, are non-union construction firms, which shouldn't be any surprise. And so, no doubt, the people that are being the employers that are being paid to construct Cop City are no doubt abusing their employees in very similar ways that the cops who would ultimately be trained in Cop City, if it is created, if it is constructed, are going to go out and abuse citizens.
Yeah, and I just want to echo those sentiments and absolutely, want to stop Cop City, and I applaud the folks who have been taking a stand there in Atlanta. And in Georgia more broadly, definitely applaud those folks, and they've been courageous, and they have withstood a lot of police repression and violence and bloodshed. And so I wanted to lift up the work of Scalawag magazine on this particular subject. They have put out a lot of writing just over the last week in particular about Cop City. Micah Herskin has a primer on Cop City. This is the Atlanta Way. I'm going to just read a little bit of the introduction here so you can get a taste for it. The struggle to stop Cop City is not just a battle over the creation of a $90 million police urban warfare center. It's not just a fight to protect the 381 acres of forest land known as one of the four lungs of Atlanta, currently under threat of destruction. It's not just a conflict over how the city invests the over $30 million that is pledged to the project, to be supplemented by at least $60 million in private funding. The movement is all of those things. But even more fundamentally, the struggle to stop Cop City is a battle for the future of Atlanta. So, I really recommend this article by Micah Herskin. This is the Atlanta Way, a primer on Cop City. It goes into a lot of detail on how did they get there, where did this idea even come from, who are the private interests who are funding this, there's the environmental aspect of this, obviously, the police violence aspect of this. It's an intersection of struggles, really. And, we'll see what happens. But I think it's, I think working people should unite around stopping Cop City and anything, remotely similar in our communities.
Yeah, absolutely. Really gross stuff happening over there, and all solidarity to the people that are protesting it, and just so that there's no so that people don't think that we're not aware of it. Tortuguita, I certainly believe was murdered. The autopsy has shown that the bullet wounds went through his palms, indicating that he was and the way that the bullets entered his legs indicate that he was sitting cross-legged with his hands up. The cops allege that he had a gun. There hasn't been any evidence of that. Has there been? I can't remember, but it's legal to carry a gun, and regardless of if he had a gun on his person or not, the autopsy shows that he was sitting cross-legged with his hands up, so he was clearly not a threat.
Right.
Seems by all accounts murdered in cold blood. And so the construction of Cop City is going to reproduce cops like that if it's allowed to be constructed. And so I do think it's incumbent on working people to oppose it.
Yeah, and absolutely, and just sending love to their family.
Yep.
I read that I read that the mother was actually coming to America, demanding answers, and God, what a tragic trip that must be to have to travel halfway across the globe because your child's been murdered by the police in a foreign country. So it's very disturbing.
Yeah, absolutely gross stuff. A little bit, not a little bit lighter. We're not talking about somebody being murdered, but still certainly not good stuff. A couple of weeks ago now, Alabama Governor Kay Ivey fired the early childhood education secretary. And Adam, you actually worked with this person during your time in the orbit of the Huntsville City Schools.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Dr. Barbara Cooper was the deputy superintendent of education in Huntsville City Schools for a few years. She actually worked under Casey Wardynski, and try not to hold that against her too much. I'll say that because I think she is as a professional, and is a professional educator, but. Yeah, it's really an example of politics and ideology just getting in the way of education. That's what I see here. Governor Ivey has pushed her out, more or less has fired her, is my understanding, over quote-unquote woke concepts. The book is the National Association for the Education of Young Children, Developmentally Appropriate Practice Book, 4th edition. I know, sounds scandalous, right? It focuses on teaching children up to the age of 8. And this is a teaching book.
Like children, a book for teachers.
A book for teachers to learn more about teaching. It is not for children. It's not even for parents. It's for teachers. Very particular audience. I'm assuming it's, a college level kind of textbook. And yeah, it's just bizarre. It's bizarre, and it's shameful to see, that kind of politics interfere, because the early childhood department in Alabama has been highly acclaimed. The pre-K department or the pre-K program in Alabama has been, widely acclaimed and had very good results. And of course there's, critiques you can make of it just like you can anything else, but by and large it's been pretty successful, particularly, as a way to get kids caught up for kindergarten. It provides essential child care for families who need the help. The biggest critique of the system is that it's not universal and it's not available for all children, but that's because the Alabama legislature hasn't made it a priority to fund that. They could if they wanted to. But, back to Dr. Cooper, I worked with her and I found her to be a professional. Obviously her working under Casey Wardynski, we didn't see eye to eye. But, I never was, I found her to be a disagreeable person. She was always very respectful. I think she knew her stuff. I think she's a person that has always tried to work inside the system, one of those kind of educators, and, has kind of worked their way up the ranks doing that. There are drawbacks to that, and I think she's lived it because the Wardynski people turned their back on her in Huntsville when everything hit the fan with him, and he made his hasty resignation. They tried to pin a lot on Dr. Cooper because she was there. Right, she was the deputy, and she still hadn't resigned yet. And here we see, white conservatives stabbing her in the back yet again. And so that's sad, and it's just sad that developmentally appropriate pedagogy, teaching that is appropriate for kids of particular ages, is becoming scandalous.
Right.
Just treating people fairly, being cognizant of inequities that exist and trying to reduce them, valuing diversity. These things are becoming scandalous and controversial, and risking termination for educators. And that is, I think it's scary, and I think it is part and parcel of a broader attack on public education and public school teachers and public school students. And but I think it's really disturbing, and I think the governor should be ashamed of herself. Right. There was nothing objectionable that I found, that I saw. I really recommend checking out the Alabama Reflector's coverage of this. They've done a good job, and they really actually reviewed the book in question and included quite a bit from the book.
Yeah, and let's actually, I want to just go over some of this stuff, because in the Alabama Reflector piece by Gemma Stevenson, they mentioned that the governor's office said they received a complaint about the book teaching about white privilege, structural racism, and messaging promoting equality, dignity, and worth around LGBTQIA+ identities.
I'm sorry, but what is objectionable about equality, dignity, and worth around a person's a person's identity? Like,
So here's they say that one passage said that teachers need to be particularly aware of providing supporting environments and responses to children who are members of marginalized groups and those who have been targets of bias and stereotyping. I mean, this is
okay. I mean,
like, that's good. You need to. This is not
common sense.
Yeah, this is not saying to be left-wing racist towards whites. This is just saying, there are people have different cultural backgrounds. People face different things when they get home from school. And so be aware of that as you're teaching them, and try to be as effective an educator for them as you can be, and try to, where appropriate, mold your teaching style to the individual student. I mean, this is something that in other circumstances they would absolutely be in favor of individualized lesson planning, and so this book is kind of motioning towards that, and they're pretending to be outraged about it.
And it's just making honest reflections and observations about society. It comments on studies that indicate black students receive much more severe discipline in public schools than white students. That's a fact.
Right.
And I thought facts didn't care about your feelings and all that bullshit. And that's a fact.
In that passage, they don't say, they just mention this fact and say to be aware of it. They do not say, here is this fact, and therefore your disciplinary
take some action A or B or C that is somehow negative towards somebody.
Right, and therefore your disciplinary record ought to reflect exactly the racial proportion of your classroom. Of course, that's not always going to happen, but it's just giving the there's no light without heat. You have to understand the world that you're moving through to be able to move through it in the best way possible. And it's just giving these statistics to the teachers, and saying that, be cognizant of this, right? And it's important to be cognizant of realities.
Right.
There's another passage that discusses structural racism, and the book says, quote, "Early learning settings are one of the central handful of places where children begin to see how they are represented in society. Thus, the early learning setting can be a place of affirmation and healing for children, or it can be a space of trauma, terror, and exclusion. Educators must work to ensure that it is the former." Here again, this is accurate and good. Accurate and good.
I mean, you can say, well, there's a pretty broad spectrum between affirmation and healing on one side and trauma, terror, and exclusion on the other.
Right.
Okay, fair enough. There's a lot of territory between those two, poles there. But what is inaccurate about any of that?
Mm-hmm.
And that is part of the problem, is that being accurate, being truthful, is not a defense against these people, against these manufactured right-wing outrages. And the fusion of culture war with the assault on public institutions. that is part of it, is that they are scared of history and the truth and reality and statistics. These things threaten their reality, threaten their ideology.
When it mentions, and this is really kind of the linchpin, I think, because the recent thing has been attacks on queer folks.
Right.
And so
absolutely. Especially trans folks, because they found a really small minority to bully and pick on.
Yeah. And so when it's mentioned, when LGBT identities are mentioned, it is a reminder to teachers that families are different. That's the crux of the thing. And the quote from the book is, children from all families, for example, single parent, grandparent-led, foster, LGBTQIA+, need to hear and see messages that promote equality, dignity, and worth. How can you object to that? The book goes on to say, quote, providing support and encouragement for personal expression and non-gendered play, that is, honoring children's ideas and choices with respect to gender roles and play, also teaches children acceptance and communicates their value within the classroom community. This is not saying teachers go trans your kids.
Right.
This is saying if if a boy student wants to play with a Barbie doll, who gives a shit?
Right. Don't discipline them. Don't
don't be
scold
fucking
them.
weird about it.
Right. Exactly. Let kids play and let them do their thing and figure out, what they're doing. It's so objectionable.
Yeah.
That we have understanding.
Yeah, and the final passage about LGBT stuff says, quote, an affirmation of children's identities is critical because children derive a sense of pride, self-worth, and consistency from their social and cultural identities. For example, including books that explore and celebrate different types of hair, different skin colors, and a range of abilities helps to shape a child's positive self-identity, contributing to feelings of belonging and fostering a sense of care for others. And so it is beneficial not only for students to see themselves represented. If I'm a black student and all I ever see in my classroom is representation of white folks, it may contribute to a feeling of isolation and exclusion, and reasonably so. But also, it is good for the members of the majority to see that they are not the only people that society is not centered around them being white or them being male, or it ought not be, and that other people exist, and we ought to be mindful and respectful of their dignity and equality and worth. And this is the thing that they objected to, and there was one complaint, is my understanding, to the governor's office.
From my understanding, a legislator claimed they had a teacher report it to them, a pre-K teacher report this information to them, the legislator in turn reported it to the governor's office.
This is just really sick stuff, because this means that there's a pre-K teacher out there that saw, hey, you got kids that have gay parents. You got to treat them nice.
And was offended by that.
Yeah,
and let me just say something on this subject. I think it's important that we recognize that as we support workers and we defend workers and we support educators and defend educators, we recognize that they're not all perfect angels, and that there are bigots inside the ranks. Now, I believe there's a difference when you have, bigotry, it matters what access to power they have, right? So a bigot as a principal is, I think more important than a bigot as a teacher, and so on, up the scale of authority and power. But, it is a shame that there are still some bigoted folks in the education profession, in Alabama and elsewhere, I'm sure. And I've encountered some over the years, and, probably if you think about it, you probably have too, whoever's listening, and it's a shame. And I think it's a responsibility for educators to organize and educate and try to undo the bigotry and try to respond to it, to call it out when they see it, and to try to paint a different direction. And, educators should be out there sounding the alarms about this action by the governor, and should be defending the concepts of equity and dignity and worth, right? That's worth championing. And, maybe you can call it being a social justice warrior or being woke or whatever, phrase of the day. But I think treating people decently, regardless of who they are, is a pretty fundamental value.
Mm-hmm.
And that is under attack. And so is teaching the truth. So is acknowledging reality. So is intellectual freedom. These things are under attack. So educators have to organize and band together and be more vocal in standing up against this. And I know it's scary because of the limited rights they have and the retaliation they face and the, overburdened working conditions they experience. I get that. I've been in the trenches and I understand that. But, educators have a responsibility to hold the profession up to a certain standard, and that includes dealing with bigots who are in our ranks. And calling them out when we need to call them out, and re-educating and educating them when we need to and when we can. But, I think it's a mistake to cater to that, to say, well, a certain segment of the educators are, not just conservative, but outright reactionary and or bigoted. And, well, we don't want to offend them. And I think there's a lot of fence riding in the education community, and a lot of folks want to cater to those reactionaries at the expense of their fundamental values.
Yeah. Yeah. Real gross stuff. Real gross stuff here from...
So, Dr. Cooper, sending you all the best. Even though you've been in management for a long time, I think you're someone who does genuinely want what's best for kids. I cannot say that about the governor or her spokeswoman who put out this garbage statement, or the people who have astroturfed such things like woke concepts.
Yeah. I wanted to mention before we go on to the next topic that there is right now happening a meeting in Montgomery of the Alabama State Democratic Executive Committee.
That's right.
And Hayden Wright is vice chair of the Youth Caucus, and they are voting on proposed bylaws revision again after it failed a couple of months ago. And you would think that, okay, look, the leadership of the party who wants to change these bylaws to increase the power of their own caucus and decrease the power of the other caucuses would just say, okay, look, instead of continuing this fight, this power fight, which is what Randy Kelly admitted on this radio program that it was about. He said this is a power struggle. Or maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was either on this program or Josh Moon's podcast. I can't remember which, but he said this is about power, which is accurate and I think maybe, more honest than maybe some people would expect him to be about it. But it's about power. But in his quest for power, in his quest for consolidation of power, he is factually decreasing the representation of other minority groups besides black folks in the ruling party of the Alabama Democrats, or in the governing committee of the Alabama Democrats. And so the Youth Caucus put out a statement. Hayden tweeted it out yesterday, and so I'm going to read some of it from the Youth Caucus about the proposed bylaws. She said, the Alabama Democratic Party Youth Caucus said, the Alabama Democratic Party Youth Caucus is raising a call to action as it has come to our attention that bylaw amendments have been introduced aimed at dismantling the diversity caucuses. These caucuses in the Alabama Democratic Party, which include the Youth Caucus, the Native American Caucus, the LGBTQ Caucus, Hispanic, and the Asian and Pacific Islander Caucus, have been vital in representing and empowering the diverse voices within the party. In a state in which Democrats must unite in order to take on the Republicans, who hold every statewide elective office and supermajorities in both the state House and Senate, an attempt to dissolve these caucuses and silence the growing strength of underrepresented communities within the Alabama Democratic Party and across the state is counterproductive and only encourages division. Many members of the Youth Caucus, which represents 18 to 35-year-old Democratic voters in Alabama, as well as other members of the state Democratic Executive Committee, have stepped forward to express their outrage and disappointment at the situation, with one Youth Caucus member stating, quote, "The very essence of our party is to champion the rights and interests of all people regardless of their background. To witness some members attempt to eliminate these critical diversity caucus is not only appalling, but goes against the fundamental values of the Democratic Party. We will not allow our voices to be silenced. The Youth Caucus is urging party members, supporters, and concerned citizens to stand in solidarity with the diversity caucuses and protect the democratic process within the Alabama Democratic Party. It's crucial that the party remains inclusive and continues to uplift voices of all communities in our state." And so they go on to say a couple other things, but that's really the gist of it. And she said in our tweet that I believe all individuals should be given a seat at the table. Who can speak to the issues faced by these communities better than themselves? The caucuses provide a voice to all minorities. And I think that's important to recognize. And sadly, we were just talking about the Alabama Reflector. Alander Roja, or is it Roja or Roca? Alander Roja just tweeted that the Alabama Democrats are feuding. I mean, this is breaking news, as in like it less than an hour ago. The Alabama Democrats are feuding over the proposed bylaws, which would eliminate the youth, LGBTQ+, and disabled caucuses and give the chair the sole power to appoint new committees. There are voting members outside who are told they can't come in because they didn't pay a $50 fee.
Wow.
One member told me she did not receive any email or notifications about the $50 fee. One faction is calling for the meeting to be adjourned, and the chair told Tabitha Isner that she was out of order when she asked, are they elected members or are they not? The chair said there were 63 votes for and 49 votes against the proposed bylaws. Members are calling for a roll call vote.
It's just so sad to see.
Yeah.
It's a disorganized bunch of foolishness, and it's just sad.
Yeah.
And, you know, the working people of Alabama deserve much, 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 much better than what the Alabama Democratic Party has to offer and has offered for quite some time. So, you know, I think we'll see what happens with it, but it's a shame. You would think building a coalition would be the goal of a minority party. You would think.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
If one were inclined to make any progress whatsoever, it would be growing your coalition. And it seems to me there are people who have no interest in doing that.
Right.
Whether they want to be a big fish in a small pond or for whatever reason.
Yeah, it really is. It's really baffling why you would continue. I mean, you know, I guess this is kind of like the iron law of institutions, right? You would rather preserve your power within the institution than grow the power of the institution itself. But it is really kind of bizarre to see this sort of stuff happening. Continue power struggles within a completely, at this point, irrelevant organization.
Right, yeah.
As opposed to trying to say, like, okay, look. And it's not even like, you know, he won. The Joe Reed, Randy Kelly faction won the power of the chair. And so you would think they would just be satisfied with that, as opposed to saying, no, we have to have like total and unilateral control and complete control over this completely irrelevant and dead and dying institution.
Right. How does this engage more people?
Yeah,
How does this build the party? How does this grow your coalition? How? I don't, you know, that's supposed to be your goal, right? Ostensibly, that's the goal, and I don't understand it. If you have people who are interested in getting involved, you should see that as an asset, not as a threat.
Yeah, it's just
But-
it's wild, and so and you know and this kind of stuff is why back in 2018 I made the decision to step back from electoral stuff and party and Democratic Party stuff, and focus on my union work, because of course you see some kind of stuff like this, but you do see, it seems to me, I see less of this within the union world than within the Democratic Party world, and less there's definitely needless fighting and personality conflicts and stuff like this, but the material implications, I guess, of the fights are more there, as opposed to this is all just vanity stuff. And it's
those are relationships in the workplace, and also you're talking about institutions that are fundamentally more democratic than the Democratic Party.
Yeah,
the Democratic Party has no obligation to be a democratic entity.
Right.
It just doesn't really.
Yeah.
So, unions by law have to be.
Right.
But a political party, it's a little different. Seems to me they don't have quite the strict regulation there.
Free American 2020 in the chat said, somebody once said something about not being a member of an organized political party. They were a Democrat.
Right.
All right. Adam, let's talk about your school visits last week. Last week, you went to 3 different schools?
2 different schools across 3 different days.
On 3 different days. For Workers' Memorial Day and for May Day, talking about organized labor, the history of unions, what unions do for workers today. So talk to us about, first talk to us about the lesson plan. What did you go over with these folks?
Yeah. So, you said a little bit of it. I, of course, introduced myself and talked about my own journey in the labor movement. And got a chance to talk about, IATSE stagehand life and show them some photos of backstage, tell them a little bit about what we do, but also described what is a union and defined unions, the different types of unions, what they do. And then we took a look at, membership of unions across the country and in Alabama and even across the world. Before we wrap things up, though, we did some union history, and we looked at the history of unions in the United States. Whether that's the different kind of waves of unionization that have taken place in different eras, along with some key terms and people and events like the IWW and Mother Jones and the Knights of Labor. So we hit several social studies standards in the lesson. 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade history classes. And then we also had the career readiness component of it, because we talked about union job opportunities available in the community, including the apprenticeship programs that so many of our trade unions offer. I was really excited. So I visited 2 schools. One was Elkmont High School, and one was the Limestone County Tech School. And it was 10th and 11th grade U.S. history classes at both schools. And at the tech school, I actually had Eddie Mitchell and Thomas Berryhill from Ironworkers 477 get to join me and talk more in detail about their apprenticeship program and the opportunities they provide. So, I know at least some of the kids reported that, they were very excited to hear about other opportunities besides just the typical, college, military, or whatever local job you can find, right? So that was a little bit about what we did and some of the stuff we talked about.
That's really, really cool, and I'm glad that you were able to do that. You said that you had a feedback form, and 111 kids responded. Is that did every kid respond? Was that part of the assignment? Or?
Yeah. So every kid, gave me some feedback. And it was 111 students total. I was able to talk to across 3 days. Across 2 schools. So that was really cool, and it was just a standard feedback form, but I asked them to give me a rating, me and the presentation itself, a rating from 1 to 5, 5 being best. and the average rating was about 4.67 or so. So, I think about like 80 of the 111 gave it a 5. I will take those numbers any day.
Yeah.
Those are good numbers because teenagers can be a tough crowd. The Elkmont kids, some of them already knew me because my wife teaches there. I substitute there occasionally. At the tech school, it's a little different, and they were on a long block period class. So I was with them for quite a bit during the class. So it was, different, a little different audiences, different structures to the presentation. Was able to do a little bit more like group work in the tech classes on the history part of things, which I always believe in. So the feedback was positive. There were several kids who were interested in learning more about unions. Several kids learned that unions actually existed in the industries that they're interested in. For example, there was a young man who wants to work in the video game industry. So I told him, how there's been a growing effort to unionize in the video game industry, whether it's Sega or Blizzard. So there were several conversations like that were really good. Lots of good feedback and comments. I think the kids really learned something, and hopefully some of them at least will take up some of the opportunities. If nothing else, they're aware of them now, where maybe they weren't before. At least half the class or more did not raise their hand when asked, have you heard of a labor union before? Now, particularly in the 10th grade, where, it hasn't really come up a lot in class. Now, in 11th grade, they ought to know it, but, I also know how frequently 11th graders pay attention. Right. So, but still, a good many of these kids had very, very little prior knowledge. There were a couple kids here and there who had an uncle or a cousin in the union or a dad in the union, but, kind of few and far between. What I did find is that many of these kids were already working, even the 10th graders. Many of them were already working and working quite a bit, actually, and certainly going right up to the line on the child labor law, frankly. These kids are working their tails off, and that's an interesting thing. I mean, it's hard to focus on school when you're tired from work, and, school is its own kind of job. So, we had some good conversations. We talked about right to work versus at-will employment. We talked about what should it look like when a worker gets fired, Right. When should a worker get fired? How should that happen? What's your different perspective as a boss versus a worker in that situation? So we had some good conversations, and, I'm excited to do more of that. I think the labor movement, we always have to be growing. We always have to be building our support and expanding our outreach. And so why not talk with young people? Employers are doing it. Colleges are doing it. The military is doing it. So our labor movement should be doing it as well, talking with high school students. And so, I hope to do a lot more of this with the North Alabama Labor Council. I know I've already confirmed another teacher is interested at a different high school next year. And so, bring them on. The more the merrier. I hope we can do this more broadly, and I hope we can do more outreach in terms of career fairs and job fairs, that sort of thing as well. Because we've got trade unions out here in the community with great apprenticeship programs, great job opportunities. These kids can learn and get paid while they learn, and then graduate and get a good job, without debt. That's pretty cool, and a lot of kids just, they need to know about that opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I appreciate you going and doing that.
Absolutely.
And like you said, happy to have the Labor Council's support, and hope to be doing it more through the Labor Council and bringing more of our union affiliates in. If you're, a member of a union locally and you want to get in on the next right. school visit, let us know. And if you're in a local union, or even if you're not in a local union, and you've got connections in a school, that a history teacher, or the principal or something,
right?
Definitely feel free to to gauge their interest and see if
Yeah,
they'd be
absolutely.
interested in us coming by.
Yeah, we'd like to talk to as many high schools as possible. We'd like to connect through the history classes to make sure that the history of unionism is being taught. And I thought that was important that I spoke on Workers' Memorial Day and International Workers' Day. But also, the career tech folks, ready to work classes, things like that. If you know anybody or if you're a high school educator and you'd be interested in us coming, just let us know because we definitely take you up on the opportunity.
Absolutely. So there are a few more topics, Adam, that we haven't gotten to yet. Do you want to save them for next week, or you want to try to run through some of them?
I think I'm good to save them for next week. I know we've got a busy week ahead. You've got a big weekend. You are getting married, so that's a pretty big deal. Let's make it easy on ourselves. These stories will still be relevant next week, I promise you.
All right. Well, that sounds good. Everybody, really appreciate you hanging out with us.
Yeah.
If you have any questions that you would like to ask us or comments for the show, any comments on any of the stories, definitely feel free to leave us a voicemail or send us a text message at 844-899-8857. That's 844-899-TVLR.
Yeah, absolutely. And just a couple final plugs. Don't forget about Shop Talk on Thursday mornings. Now, as Joe pointed out, I'm not super reliable on the time frame. 9:30 is a goal. It's not a deadlocked thing.
If you want it to be a deadlocked thing, then consider getting your organization to support Shop Talk so that he can have the resources to make sure that he's here at 9:30 on Thursdays.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's the way to do it. We've got a whole lot more money behind the main show on Saturdays. And so a whole lot more reason to ensure that we're consistent on the time on Saturdays.
Yeah. So Shop Talk, it is what it is. I couldn't help it. I had a flat tire, and the shop took way too long to put on two tires. I don't know what was going on there, but Shop Talk is on Thursdays. I know the type of content we're doing on Shop Talk is kind of evergreen, so it's stuff that you can come back to. So if you've missed some of the previous episodes, check out the back catalog. It's all about labor education, history, and training. And we've been kind of rotating about every other episode. So, a history episode followed by a training episode, followed by a history episode, and so on. That's kind of been the rotation lately. So just did a history episode this week. Probably going to do a training episode next week. I've got a special featured labor notes episode this month. For the first month, and so that's going to be cool. I've already talked to a really cool Teamster brother about an article he did. So check out Shop Talk, and if you're not already, sign up for our email list at tvlr.fm. Definitely want that. And my last thing I wanted to say is that it is Teacher Appreciation Week. I really love and appreciate all the teachers. Thank you to all the teachers who taught me. Thank you to my daughter's teachers. Thank you to my wife, who is a fantastic teacher herself. And to all my educator kin, I hope you felt appreciated this week. I definitely know how hard your job is and how important your job is. And you deserve support. For me as a teacher, one of my most favorite gifts you could give me would be to email your legislators and tell them to stop screwing me over and to actually, oppose privatization and support funding of public schools. So if you haven't done that this week, if you haven't contacted your legislator, that's a great way to show teacher appreciation. Believe me, if they're anything like me, they'll appreciate that more than, a Starbucks gift card, though those are welcome as well. But, just want to send my love and appreciation to all the educators. I'm grateful that I had an opportunity to teach some really amazing students and, been able to see them grow into fully fledged adult humans, with their own success and their own lives, and that's really cool. And got a chance to meet and serve with a lot of educators in Huntsville and across Alabama, struggle alongside those educators for better working conditions and better schools. And so
they will always have a special place in my heart, and I really appreciate you.
Absolutely. You can also buy our new shirts, tvlr.fm/store.
Oh, yeah,
Give you one more
definitely.
look. There you go. You want to get that?
Get the shirt.
All right, folks. We're going to head on out of here. Y'all have a good weekend.
Solidarity, y'all.